Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Wednesday, October 20th. Let's hop in. We have a decent amount of news and games that have come out, so I think we'll try and rush through everything fairly quickly today, although we do that every stream and we never actually do take less than 3 hours. I am still playing Lego Pirates of the Caribbean. Still not really seeing any micro stuttering at all. And I've lowered the compatibility mode to Windows XP Service Pack 3, which is the minimum requirement on Steam for Lego Pirates of the Caribbean. And I suspect that is probably the compatibility mode you want to use for probably all Lego games. Plus you want to disable full screen optimizations. That being said, there still have been a couple of crashes over the journey of playing Lego Pirates of the Caribbean and being close to being done, somewhere around 75% being completed, I would say, at this point. There have been some crashes. I've seen some hitching. There is definitely some polish that is lacking specifically for Lego Pirates of the Caribbean compared to the other Lego games. And storyline wise, like the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, I think are kind of not that good, and the Lego telling of those movies is pretty awful because it doesn't have any voice acting when it really could have used it to explain what's going on, or it could have just had better pantomime and more gags in general. Honestly, the idea of the early Lego games not having voice acting and having pantomime and gags worked for basically the first two Lego Star Wars games, and that was it. After that, it really should have been abandoned. And certainly had they stuck with that, then the like Lego movies that exist now would be probably not successful, and it would be very weird. I'm intentionally sitting on gold and tickets because we pretty much, I think, have as much as we're likely to get for the effort in the new expansion. So we're just waiting for the next expansion, the midstream expansion to come out, so that we can start to see some new cards. See, if we're in create card mode here, you can see first card we don't even have. One of is a 3 cost 3,500 vial card. Then you've got 2 on this page, 2 on this page, 2 on this page, and that's it. So yeah, not really a lot going on as far as missing cards. Arena wise, I did qualify, so we don't have an arena entry. I misinterpreted when this was going to expire, so I finished this early, so that saves me a lot of time. So that means pretty much today we can just focus on whatever the daily quests are. And see, ranked matches, swordcraft. Do we want to trade a 40, or do we want to just play swordcraft all today? I think we just want to play swordcraft. Do we want to play ranked? Probably not. Like, what's going to happen here is that tournament that's happening right now will end, and then maybe we'll get some better guidance on rebuilding decks. Alright, so let's start going through the video game news, since there's not anything else really to talk about. I'm definitely feeling like we are in I personally am in a weird position where we're starting to get towards the Black Friday and the end of the year season, and at that point, I kind of wanted to just check out and not really attempt anything new. It's the slow time for my YouTube channel. Historically, it has been. It would be nice if it wasn't, but there's a whole bunch of sales happening because Amazon had their Prime Day so early, and frankly, the deals there weren't that great, but I still ended up spending a lot. I don't think I'm expecting to spend too much around Black Friday at all, just try to maintain collecting Steam games, and that's about it. But yeah, I'm kind of I'm getting very close to having to just back burner the irrigation box project that I was working on, since it is now winter, and well, that was supposed to be part of it, is it was supposed to help insulate things. I just think I may get very distracted and not finish that, or I have gotten very distracted already and not really accomplish that. So I may just back burner that for a while. And I don't think I want to really take on any extra projects at all. Because, yeah, I still am way far behind scheduling videos, and I need to just get that done.
I go with the wind.
As for this Halloween month, I mean, if I had any better offering at this point, I probably would just replace the concept of having a Halloween month, which on my channel, but I don't have a better idea, certainly. And having one month that kind of acts as the reset point each year for things isn't a terrible thought. Let's see. This. And then this. Let's try that.
Flank them. Well, this ain't ideal, is it?
It's probably not too terrible a way to start. I decided to order a Tablo, T-A-B-L-O, which is a DVR that works with Roku TVs to watch live TV and record live over-the-air TV, effectively eliminating the need to pay for local channels on something like Dish or a cable provider, if you can get it to really work, and you really even need that. That is ultimately the real question. Now, the Tablo is having a sale right now, so it was like $30 off of something that would have been $240 normally, which is nice. So that helped me pull the trigger on that. But you definitely have to consider whether the people in your household, if they're watching TV at all, like, there's, with the exception of local sports and local news, there's really nothing on local TV to watch, and you get a much better experience either with Disney Plus or Netflix or Hulu. Hulu in particular has a decent collection of what would be on the local channels, and it also certainly depends on what areas you live in, because in some places the local channels may very well just be ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox, and PBS if you watch PBS, and maybe the CW. Yeah, but in other areas you may be getting 4 or 5 different variations on a Fox, as they've introduced the idea of subchannels, and subchannels were never really converted or brought to a lot of providers. And the main motivation factor is I'm just tired of local channels and service providers fighting for carriage fees and blacking out each other and putting on obnoxious things, which is happening almost every single year on at least one or two channels. But the problem there is, even if you are getting the footage over the air, there's nothing stopping the local air provider from putting their propaganda on the over-the-air feed too. So, like, you still get these nasty you get drawn into these nasty fights regardless. And yeah, for the most part, live TV is not really worth it. To talk about the Tableau though, theoretically you could get a lifetime subscription service for the life of Tableau as a business. I think you have a decent chance that will last for at least another 10 years for like $170. That may be $170 per device though, so otherwise you're paying like $5 a month or $50 a year just for the channel skipping feature and the not channel skipping, commercial skipping feature, and and later, like a week ahead scheduling. If you don't pay for anything on that, you start with a 30-day like taste, certainly, and then after the 30-day taste, it drops down to like the next day schedule recording. Now, that may not really matter to you much if you are more used to the way Dish in particular does things, because Dish has their primetime anytime setup that records everything during primetime on all 4 channels anyways. And I would say the Dish Hopper still is kind of better, because if you have the newest hopper, you can have basically 6 things recorded at the same time, where the 4 tuner on the Tableau is only going to be able to record 4 things. The odds of 4 things being on at the same time though tend not to really happen that often. But if you are programming the Tableau to, theoretically, I haven't seen it yet, I just ordered it yesterday. Theoretically though, if you're programming it to record everything in the primetime time slots, then you don't really have to worry about scheduling and airing or anything at all. You're just gonna tear out the kind of small 1 terabyte hard drive. You're just gonna write to it constantly and then unwrite to it.
I guess you're looking for a fight.
I saw some reviews that said because you're streaming it over internet protocols to a Roku TV, you probably aren't gonna get as nice of graphics as if you were just watching it live through an antenna hooked directly to a TV, which for somebody who's been using Dish, that's still probably not going to be a problem, because it probably is going to look as good, if not better, than what Dish does. Dish's video quality going through satellites has always been pretty awful. They just had a really nice hopper technology. The problem is they also cost way too much. Like, in total, if you bought the quad tuner Tableau with HDMI out and didn't have a hard drive built in, there's 2 models, and you probably would just wanted, while it was cheaper to get the version on sale with the hard drive in it, in reality, losing an HDMI out, it kind of sucks, but it is cheaper than immediately at the moment trying to find an external USB hard drive to plug into it. But that would be, I think, the step forward, is if I was ever going to get another one for some reason, I would get the one with the HDMI out and a USB hard drive plugged into the back of it. I'm also crossing my fingers that if Tableau ever breaks, goes out of business, that the devices are fairly hackable, so that you could just download these schedules and the information online, or use it as some other kind of media streaming device if Tableau ever goes out of business. At the moment, it's better. It's a better device as it is, I would assume.
Let's speed things up.
So,
Unbelievable.
as much as I said I didn't want another project, I literally just started another project. But I'm not expecting it to take too much time. Honestly, it's just going to be plugging it in, setting it up, seeing if it works particularly well over the internet, and when not connected to your own Wi-Fi landline, local area network, not landline, local area network stuff.
I beg of you, teach me more.
So yeah. There's sadly not enough competition, and there is a hard push, certainly, to push everybody towards their own streaming services, and they're just running a scam, a bait and switch scam, basically, of, hey, you want to be a cord cutter and save some money? Good. Instead, get Netflix and Hulu and all these other things. Oh, we've raised the price on all of these, so now these, in total, to get what you actually want to see is more expensive, if not the same price, as just having a cable service in the first place. And it is a very personal, question, certainly, is just how much of the basic cable are you watching, how much extended cable are you watching, and how much over-the-air network are you watching. Because if you've got a family and there's 5 different people and they're watching 5 different channels, then cable probably still is your best bet. I had to let my phone reset its battery stats because it was off. So I had to spend yesterday not doing anything on my phone, which led me to watching the Netflix kids movie Nightbooks, which I will give a quick movie review to say, yeah, I thought it was fine.
Uncharted desert awaits.
The twist, which I guess it's a spoiler to say there's a twist, was pretty predictable. It basically could have been one of 2 people. And I think that's kind of the main complaint I can make about Nightbooks. Like, a little kid watching the movie, probably wouldn't have anything to complain about at all, but older kids and adults are going to have a complaint about the story being fairly straightforward and fairly bad. It's based on a book, and I imagine in the book there's just better description and more writing, or it's just a kid's book and thus it's held to a lower standard.
I need more fear, more terror.
Let's see. We'll hold on to this, and this.
How's that? I'm out of cash? Die, creepy.
Get that one.
What pluck?
In return.
An opportunity for growth.
But yeah, it was a little too straightforward. And also, I would say Nightbooks is weird in that it makes a lot of references to horror movies that this little kid who's obsessed with writing scary stories really has no business knowing at all. Clearly, it was written by an author who was kind of obsessed with horror movies and things like that, and putting in references. Like when you're referencing The Lost Boys as a movie, that's somebody who grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, or at least 80s, and saw The Lost Boys when it came out. It's not a little 14-year-old kid, which is what I guess the main actor was playing. Yeah, there's just no reason he would have ever even heard of Lost Boys.
To arms!
And
There's
like,
a battle
it
underway!
is a pretty
Time to
weak
get started.
motivation that starts the movie, and a pretty weak wrap up. What's really weird about it, though, is the visual effects team, whoever was in charge of the visual effects and night books, is just on a completely different page with the rest of the movie, in the sense that they basically made like a South Korean horror movie, and there are these cutaways when the kid is telling a horror story, and yeah, it's like really scary. And then there's a point where there's a CGI creature that they're fighting, and the CGI creature is incredibly scary. And then at the end, there's this giant main enemy creature, and it's way better decorated and way scarier than you would expect for this movie. So I can't help but assume that there was two teams, one making a really, really scary like Korean zombie movie, and then there was this other team that was just making a very simplistic kind of unenthusiastic kids horror movie. And I think one side there clearly probably was just given a job by Netflix to make some kind of horror movie or something to show off that's new for Halloween, because Netflix is trying to promote Halloween movies and horror movies and promote their more adult, mature horror movies, and they just had nothing for kids lined up at all. They're recommending going back and like watching Goosebumps from the old Nickelodeon Goosebumps series from decades earlier.
Show me the limits of your will.
Anyways, I said I wanted to rush, so there's really no reason to be talking about this movie.
Lose yourself.
Gametsu says the romance visual novel Suki no Kanata de Amasho show is coming to PS4, Switch on February 24th in Japan. So we've got another visual novel here, and another kind of great example of the different artworks and the different level of censorship that seems to be happening at Sony versus even Nintendo. Here you have a very tall section that is cutting off the legs of these characters, and you have a wide section here that's cutting off the moon. They've also, in the PlayStation 4, put the text directly over the legs of this character. So, it's not like you can't really see any pantsu, or as they call it in Japanese, or underwear. But it seems like they wanted to try and de-emphasize the upskirt nature that is kind of happening there. And then you have the reversible art, and it is completely the same. So it's clearly Sony limiting the packaging art. Also, of course, we have to talk about the Sony logo always taking up like the full like top of an image, where Nintendo Switch is taking a little bit less. What I find is kind of interesting is how big or how not so big the logos are, because you'd almost think that the Sero, which is their ratings, the age ratings here, would almost have to be at the same number of dots per inch for both packaging, but they're not. And the logo, which I'm sure they were willing to make the logo a little bit smaller, is a little bit smaller too. But then when you get to this point, the logos of the company are the same. Here, the Nintendo logo is bigger, and the Zero logo is higher over here and slightly smaller. And that is to say quite a bit about a visual novel, but it is consistently showing us that we still are at that level.
That was almost amusing. Got to roam in style.
Hit that one,
That's enough for me.
My loyalty is ironclad.
and then
Steel yourself.
hit that one,
That's
My
enough for
loyalty
me.
is ironclad.
Die, cretin.
and then we'll just end the turn there.
I take so much for that axe.
Moving on, Video Game Chronicles says the Cyberpunk and Witcher 3's next-gen versions have been delayed to 2022. The CD Projekt has allocated additional development time for both titles. I kind of wouldn't be surprised if we never see next-gen versions of these games released. I'm not sure if too many people would even have remembered that next-generation versions were promised at this point, and I'm not sure if anybody kind of cares. Okay. Strike.
A flurry of droplets.
If I evolve this,
March on.
Drip, 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 and
I
drip.
can do
flurry of
this.
droplets.
Steel
and we
yourself.
can attack there. Here we have a game called Howling Villages Echoes, which,
And so up.
let's see what this looks like. Looks like it's probably a Chinese adventure game if I was to guess. Or at least a low effort adventure game. $6.99, English and Japanese, not Chinese. So yeah, I'll say no to that. Let's see. I'm gonna try and avoid redundant articles such as this. Who is this character? Is that supposed to be the character you were playing as? That's not what I remember him looking like. And frankly, this guy doesn't really even look like Keanu Reeves. Have they just redone the visuals so much in Cyberpunk that they don't even look noticeable? Meanwhile, Geralt of Rivia looks exactly like how I remember him. Yeah, the problem with Witcher 3 though is it's going to, I think, consistently try and have an experience that not too unlike
Resolution in my right hand.
the Skyrim
Left.
series of games, in which they are just going to try to constantly add new versions of the same game.
Today.
Can we win here? Probably not.
Are you
Let's
worth
hit
your weight in
this
gold?
A
and
flurry
this,
of droplets. A flurry of
this,
Steel
and this.
yourself.
Yeah. I don't know if there's enough to justify ever playing Witcher 3 again after the first time you've ever played it. I think even Skyrim, in the way it's re-released itself, or GTA, in the way it's re-released itself over and over again, are very ridiculous, problematic ways for the video game industry to potentially dabble into and go.
Morality tour begin.
I saw an article just a couple days ago talking about how the remastered, newest version of Skyrim is breaking all the mods, and
Enemy or no, you did good.
and they're all integrating the Creation Club. But even if you are releasing your mods in the Bethesda Creation Club, it's still breaking things. So there is some hyperbole that might be the end of Skyrim modding. which at some point something needs to be the end of Skyrim modding. There needs to be a new game that supported mods way better, and had Witcher 3 been that game, then possibly there would be an argument to go back and playing it more. But it wasn't, so that won't happen. Here we have a game on Steam called Steps from Above, which looks like it's a horror low effort game of no interest. $17.99 English only. Let's see. The Xbox website is sporting a new look inspired by the 360's Blades dashboard. This is part of the brand's 20th anniversary celebration. I think I probably covered this, but I was not paying anywhere enough attention to realize this was on their website and not some theme or update that was actually happening on the Xbox itself. I suppose it is way safer and easier to change a website as part of a celebration for a couple of days than it is to change how the actual console works. Video Game Chronicle says the PlayStation 5 has ended the Switch's 33-month reign as the best-selling console in the US, while Madden NFL 22 held off a string of new releases to top the monthly software chart. So yeah, I guess they finally got enough PlayStation 5s available for purchase that they could beat out the Switch. Clearly that should have happened a lot earlier, because it's not like the Switch ever in its 33-month reign has had 2 or 3 great games coming out in an overlapping pattern, or has major hardware or like even user interface to justify being the #1 seller. If anything, you could probably flip this news the other way and just say the reason that the Switch has sold, has been in the #1 slot for 33 months is because both Microsoft and Sony, in stupidly competing with each other, have totally muddled and confused the market to the point where it's a little difficult to know what to buy, and a lot difficult to know what you can buy, and there's too many things that are still available to buy from previous generations. I imagine you could go to a GameStop and you will be able to get probably you might be able to even find an original Xbox used for sale at the GameStop, but probably not. But you probably will be able to find a used Xbox 360, at least one, then an Xbox One, Xbox One X, Xbox One S, all used. You might even have some of the Xbox Ones in new formats too, and then the Xbox One X, I don't think is a series. I think it's just the best version of the Xbox One. Yeah, even I'm getting confused at just saying it out loud. But you'll definitely be able to get a Series S and a Series X from the Xbox too. So there's 5, 6, 7 probably different Xboxes that you might see in just a random GameStop or video game store in general, particularly if it specializes in that kind of in video games. And then the PlayStation's a little bit better, but not much more, because you probably can still find, you might find a PlayStation 2, you probably won't find a PlayStation 1, but you'll probably be able to find at a random GameStop a PlayStation 2 used, or you might be able to. I wouldn't guarantee it. You probably would be able to find a used PlayStation 3. You probably would be able to get a PlayStation 3 Slim, a PlayStation 2. There were 3 versions of the PlayStation 2. Like, but
Terror.
there was a PlayStation 2 Slim at least. I don't know if there were more than 2 versions. And then you have the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 3 Slim, and the PlayStation 3
Was almost amusing.
may have had a digital version. I'm not even sure.
Die,
Um,
cretin. I'll see you in purgatory.
So, yeah, before you even get to the PlayStation 4, which there was a PlayStation 4 and then a PlayStation 4 Slim, and then you have a PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 5 Slim. The naming convention may be a little bit more logical in the PlayStations, but you're still potentially going to see, I think, at least 5 or 6 different PlayStations at a big GameStop. In all fairness, I am making a lot of claims here that a random GameStop would have these. Probably not. The more likely, the biggest GameStops will have that potential as far as listing. Also, I haven't been into a GameStop in a long time, so maybe they've really cleaned up a lot of their old content and they don't hold a bunch of old equipment. And it's a shame these consoles never have enough. They just don't have enough hard drive space to justify either speed or space to justify potentially finding an old Xbox 360 and trying to take a hard drive out of it or scrap it for parts. Even if you were trying to break it up for the copper on the insides, it would be not really worth it. Nor are any of these devices particularly the best device you would want to use to try and hack and turn into like a retro machine or anything, when you consider the alternatives of a computer, a PC, or a RetroPie. If they had any value, they would have had a value during the they would have had value during cryptocurrency and video card shortages, if they had any values. People taking old PlayStation 3s and using them to Bitcoin mine or something like that, and that didn't really happen.
Delightful.
Check out my fancy footwork. I wasn't good enough.
Moving on, because I'm kind of rambling here. Call of Duty's Halloween event launches on Tuesday with a Scream tie-in. It seems like video games have firmly established now that they are just going to always try and get movie tie-ins to to the horror games out there, or the first-person shooting games out there. This D brand apparently is trying to fight back. Black PS5 faceplate company is now taunting Sony with new designs following a legal threat. D brand says, quote, checkmate lawyers, as it introduces a new black and PlayStation 1 colored dark plates. Like, I am not sure if this isn't really just Video Game Chronicles, Video Games Chronicle falling into D brand's advertising. Yeah, I don't know if anybody has even sought out Sony's comment on this stuff to make sure this isn't just a complete and total lie being made up by the brand, and Sony never even sent lawyers after them.
Every droplet counts. Droplets in a single stroke.
Let's see.
A flurry of droplets. I take so much for that axe.
I go with the wind.
But yeah, I'll just have to reiterate what I thought before, is that it looks like these faceplates don't have a logo on them. There's pretty much no way in my mind anybody can be sued for making something that doesn't carry a logo, brand, or trademark on it that happens to fit the PlayStation 5. Maybe some people would be fairly careful and never like mention PlayStation 5 in the advertisement or branding, but in my mind there's really no way that Sony should be allowed any kind of exclusivity copyright type thing around this kind of content or around such simplistic things.
This town eats good folk for breakfast. Town eats good folk for breakfast. Hands up!
The sunlight is unwelcoming.
Moving on, Video Game Chronicles says Steam Deck will have a rating system that shows which games play best on it. Deck verified icons will let players see at a glance see which games work or which games need some tweaking. I assume that this is the idea of what they will look like as far as the logos. There is a website that already exists that kind of does the exact same thing, although it is specifically focused around the idea of it is specifically focused around the idea of getting games to run on Steam, not particularly just oops. I don't know why I didn't evolve that first.
Past is my only. You're weak.
Yep, I would have had him down to 1 health at this point. Instead of specifically on the Steam Deck, because it will be a different thing whether a game is playable on Linux versus whether it plays well on the Steam Deck. Slightly different, mostly the same. Seemingly this is what it's going to look like, and if this is what the interface is going to look like, it does seem like they're taking the Steam website and just trying to squash it down and make it a little bit more manageable on what would be a smaller screen. And then there's going to be a pop-up issues. This product has missing or inaccurate controller glyphs, which that's going to be something I think most games are going to have a problem with. You have to use a touchscreen or virtual keyboard at some points. So I imagine we will see a lot of games that Steam OS can run, that the graphics configuration works with it, and the interface text is legible. And I imagine there will be several games that say the interface text is legible, and then it really isn't going to be as legible as you'd like. Yeah, at the moment, I still don't feel like I would want to churn out even $400 for the cheap version of the Steam Deck. But what I will say is that if the Steam Deck starts to go on sale like the Steam Link did, I'm going to jump on that sale, because there was definitely a point where the Steam Link, and they were selling out on those on Steam for basically free, but then you had to pay $30 in shipping. I think it would have been interesting to have one of those and try to hack it or use it for something.
There's a battle underway.
You must die.
It's a little surprising that there isn't an idea to bring back a Steam Link 2.0, something that might act very much like a dock for the Steam Deck in the first place, so that you could own a $400 Steam Deck and then wirelessly broadcast the video and audio to a TV in a room. Ideally not using a physical dock like the Nintendo Switch. And that would let them go full circle and bring out a Steam Link 2, or a Steam Deck Link is probably what they would want to call it. Moving on, Video Game Chronicles says scalpers have snapped up the Xbox mini fridges as pre-orders sell out in minutes. Anybody that bought this, I think, is probably an idiot. And frankly, there's just been way too much talk about this mini fridge. Like, how badly does somebody need a mini fridge? I did hear the mini fridge has a USB like charger port on it, like a 1 amp charging port, though not even a high amperage charging port. Like I had, I think it's still sitting in my garage actually, a mini fridge that's probably well past being broken, that I could have had in my bedroom for years, and I have intentionally chosen to never put it in my bedroom, even though it might make a nice table. A, because I don't want something wasting electricity the whole time, but B, as much as it might annoy me on rare occasions, I think all humans need a little bit of a motivation to get up and walk around a little bit more. And I did not want to create a scenario where I have food or drink in my bedroom, so I'm like not even walking to the kitchen, which that is definitely part of like my daily exercise plan. What little exercise I do get, part of it definitely does come to, hey, are you hungry? Are you thirsty? You've got to walk to the kitchen and you've got to get food or drink. We're not gonna I'm not gonna let myself become such a lazy person that is living in such a life of convenience. And I think that idea, as far as mini fridges, probably should apply to most people. Now, I can see a scenario where, A, you're living in a tiny little apartment that can't have a refrigerator. You probably shouldn't be living in New York at that point. That's about the only place I imagine you would run into that situation. Or I could see like an office scenario where it makes sense. But yeah, for most people, I don't think you need a mini fridge. I think it's excessive, and garish might be the right word. Gaudy, maybe, is what I'm thinking of. And you definitely don't need an Xbox One. Themed one. Moving on, Xbox has revealed plans for a 20th anniversary digital broadcast. The event will offer, quote, a special look back at 20 years of Xbox, but won't include new game announcements. Which, that's probably nice to specifically just say, hey, we're going to have a 20th anniversary event, but we're not going to announce any new games. And I assume that means they're also not going to announce any new hardware. It would be kind of funny if they, surprise, we said no new games announcements, but actually here's the Xbox Series XX, double X. And if they did name the next Series XX, that would be kind of crazy, because then the assumption is the next one after that is Xbox Triple X.
Wait! Is it over already?
Don't let a single rat escape.
The thing about maintaining the Xbox, if the branding was just a little worse, I would argue to getting rid of the name and just having a new series of consoles named something different, in the way that Nintendo changes its console names fairly consistently. DirectX as a brand has stopped being of any concern to anybody even playing on PC. Nobody uses the phrase DirectX or talks about it, and the DirectX box has lost its meaning in the history, due to history, because of that. And if they really don't care about the name of their product, why not just pay some PR company to think up a new name and release a new product to differentiate something, even if it's gonna have forward compatibility and backward compatibility.
There's a battle underway. Activate.
Like what they effectively did with the Xbox when they named the Xbox, Xbox 360, Xbox One, Xbox Series X. What they effectively were doing was embracing the same dumb mentality of saying, well, Windows 10 is going to be the Windows for all of the future, and it's just, you're never going to upgrade. It's going to be a constantly rolling upgraded operating system. So, and now you see they're backing away from that and releasing Windows 11. So I wouldn't be surprised if that same mentality happens with Xbox. And I mean, it is kind of past the time that Microsoft thought of a new name for their consoles. Yeah. There is almost a danger, and I'm surprised nobody's really complained about this yet, that the Xbox basically has an X in it instead of a Y for like X chromosomes and Y chromosomes. It's a stretch, certainly, but we know SJWs stretch like crazy. So you probably don't want to make one called the Y box, because, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was some thought that the original Xbox was definitely looking for gamer bro college kids, males, college males to play it. So, but yeah, might be a little safer to get away from X being in your name. This will just end here. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says GameStop is selling PlayStation 5 console bundles online today. Update: online bundles have now sold out, but GameStop is holding an in-store PS5 event later this week. So, yeah, I think people are definitely going to try to get PlayStation 5s this season, this Christmas. And I think a lot of people are going to fail. Witcher 3 has been rated for the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X ahead of its planned 2021 release, according to Video Games Chronicle. One thing that reminded me, the Skellig Isles in Witcher 3 was this big, mostly ocean section. It had a big island in the middle, and it was kind of Vikings. But the thing with Lego Pirates of the Caribbean is you just really spend a lot of time on boats, when it feels like there should be like harpies, like in Witcher 3, that would fly and attack you occasionally, so you have more enemies to fight, and that there would be a lot more times in which you would just dive down into the ocean. Even if it is a boat level where you're supposed to be in the middle of the ocean, there should be, at least in the free play mode, a point where you go down and you're on the ocean floor and you're opening treasure chests and you're seeing fish and sea creatures and things like that. And yeah, you could have easily doubled what are fairly short levels in Lego Pirates of the Caribbean just by doing what The Witcher 3 did, which was have a lot of places where you would potentially have a place marked on your map, and you would go and either end up fighting something because of that X marks the spot on your map, or you would what do we want to keep? I guess you want to keep this one. Okay.
Die, cretin.
Hit this, I guess.
Loyalty is
And then
ironclad. March on! Harder armor! Steel
evolve that
yourself.
one there and attack there, I guess.
Sustained.
But yeah. looking at some of these screenshots from The Witcher 3, like this character, you would have thought that a half lion, half eagle, hawk type creature like this, you would have thought that there would have been all kinds of games that would have taken that idea and brought it to other fantasy games and been copycatted like crazy. Like Witcher 3 was super successful and popular, and in what can only be described as an astonishing embracement of restraint, basically nobody stole any of the character designs or themes or ideas that were in Witcher 3. Or if they did steal those ideas, they did it in such a subtle way that nobody complained about it. Quite to the detriment of gamers, because after you'd played Witcher 3 and done even the expansions, I imagine there would have been a few people that still would have liked to play a little bit more of that style of game. Moving on, let's see. Video Game Chronicle says EA is launching a new first-person shooter studio with Halo's co-creator. Why am I mispronouncing that? Marcus Letho previously created Disintegration before his indie studio folded. Well, there's definitely some weirdness there. I don't know how many people that are Halo fans would go and follow Letho or any creator from Halo in particular, and he may very well have worked on like Halo 1, and people may really like Halo 2 a lot more, just to give an example. B, I don't know if EA has any business once again making a new first-person shooter. That seems fairly crazy too. But ideally, I mean, you have to follow this kind of news with some hope. So ideally, you would hope that this is going to help EA go in a different direction potentially and stop microtransactioning people to death and stop making fairly redundant, repetitive, boring games. Yeah. Like, the problem with any company that has established a level of contempt against it, as far as a video game company or any company in general, is you can really only hope for two things. A, they get better, or B, they die. And that's not true. That's not unique to just companies. I mean, it's kind of true for people too, is that either you hope that they learn and act better, or you hope they are eliminated from the equation, aka missing, dead, or in prison. So yeah, we can try to be positive as a critic and say, well, maybe this is the beginning of something new for EA. Maybe not, though. Logically, if you're bringing on somebody who folded their last company to head up a new department in your company, that implies to me that the person, Letho there, in this case, is probably not the best leader out there. But it is totally possible that under the almost unlimited funding of EA, he might thrive, whereas independent company failed. The irony, of course, would be if Letho comes in and he's the new Randy Pitchford, just as Randy Pitchford is almost completely out the door at this point, no longer being in charge of Gearbox Games and instead being in charge of Gearbox Entertainment and movie making aspects, which yeah. We'll see what happens when the Borderlands movie never shows up or doesn't succeed. Where Randy Pitchford wants to go then. Moving on, Assassin's Creed Valhalla's free Viking Age Discovery Tour expansion is out now. This is an educational experience, which is available to buy as a standalone, although initially only for PC, according to Video Games Chronicle. You still run into kind of a major problem with these educational experiences being tied into a completely historically inaccurate game like Assassin's Creed.
I like. Give me that.
And yeah, they certainly haven't caught on in my mind as an idea. Here we have a game on Steam called KT Game, which looks like a low effort asset game, free to play, English only. Here we have a game called Poop Plague in Fairyland, which looks like a low effort joke game. $9.99, English only. Here we have a game called Robot Labs Remake, which looks like it is maybe a Portal clone, but it's really, really low polygon. Yeah. Is there an idea to playing a really, really bad version of a Portal clone? It's Russian full audio, English only. Yeah, I can't help but just assume that this is really just a Russian troll game. Yeah. And there is a danger certainly here because the Russian trolls feel like they are getting maybe smarter now because they've actually identified good, interesting games to potentially clone themselves with on. Yep. This may be a mile marker, so I'm going to put that game on the fall list. Not because they would ever make it to my wish list, but just because I'd like to see if it gets reviews and if other people ever give it a chance. I suspect the answer to that is no.
The uncharted desert awaits.
And this.
I shall clear us a path.
Let's see. Now we have a game on Steam called Crazy Fatties, which just looks like a Chinese game. Like, think Chinese people. Not Asian people in general, not used to seeing overweight people much at all, so it's fairly acceptable in most Asian countries to make fun of people who are fat or insult people who are fat, and definitely redefine what overweight means in their society versus what overweight would mean in other societies.
Are you ready for true combat, pup? Got me feeling hungry. March on.
I know Japan is particularly obsessed with the idea of their people being even slightly overweight, and calling and sensationalizing news and reporting saying they're having an obesity epidemic when like 1% of the population is overweight and not even really obese by medical standards. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Reverse Defenders, which doesn't look like anything of interest. Doesn't look like they tried to put some effort onto it, but it still very much just looks like a tower defense game with cardboard cutout characters. Then you have an anime-esque character that is just in the thumbnail. $9.99 English and Japanese. I don't know if it's just in the thumbnail, but it's not in the majority of the gameplay mechanic that character shows up. Alright.
I go with the wind. closer to victory. The second wind got to roam in style. I like
Good
it. Give me
enough.
that.
Let's see what else. Here we have a game called Sprint Fantasia, which is tagged as an MMORPG, and looks very visually polished and nice. Like it kind of looks really good, although there is some weirdness certainly here in that you have like these little chibi characters, and then you have regular looking characters, and then you have a completely different art style here. It's free to play with in-app purchases, third-party account, and third-party EULA, English full audio. Kind of want to see what the reviews are. It's a mobile brought to PC. One of the worst games I've played, even for a mobile game. Auto button for everything possible. You can hit one button and clear dungeons without doing anything. That's actually the kind of games I like. I like to play. Didn't try to improve or change anything. Genuinely a mess. More confusing than any other game I've played. Seems also to be a mobile game, so all the controls are super basic. There's an analog that takes up an entire corner of the screen because of it. Would only recommend to people on acid. So yeah. Seems like people just don't like it. And yeah, I'll take their word for it. I mean, there's no reason to fight against that kind of negative reviews. Alright.
I like it. Give me that.
I'll see you in purgatory.
Droplets. I paid so much for that axe.
Let's see. Here we have a game called All Blocks Want to Be Stacked, squished together as one word. 99 cents, English only. Here we have a game called TriStar, which looks like nothing, for $8.49, English only. Can we win here? Guess the answer to that question was no. We cannot win.
Enemy or no, you did good.
We're still struggling quite a bit to get victories. I think we've gotten one victory, and that was because somebody conceded at this rate. Yep. Oh, and I guess we should be playing ranked for the ranked matches. Moving on, Video Game Chronicles says Phil Spencer says Xbox is definitely not done buying game studios. I don't know why anybody would think that they were. He's given every indication that they plan on at least addressing some of that. What's interesting here in this art is these are games that Bethesda owned when they joined Xbox. When you compare this to the way PlayStation 5 shows off its exclusives, there is about 6 games in PlayStation 5's lineup that they're highlighting and showing off. Bethesda, on the other hand, is showing no less than 16 games. And fairly big games, too. Like, you might be able to dismiss Hellblade and Evil Within, heck, even, I think this is either, no, this isn't Far Cry, it's, yeah, I can't even remember the name of it. You might be able to dismiss a lot of these, but you can't dismiss Halo, no, I mean, Doom. You can't dismiss Wolfenstein. You really shouldn't be dismissing Dishonored or Far Cry. some of these are not actually Bethesda properties on second glance. So you would kind of have to separate some things out here, like Minecraft and racing and Halo. But yeah, when Microsoft can show off 16 games compared to PlayStation 5's 6, that's a problem. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, really, because I think Bethesda's back catalog and the companies that Microsoft now owns back catalog probably could lead to a whole decade of remakes, remasters, and just continuations of a lot of interesting products, or at least attempts at new products. Whereas you have the opposite situation with Ubisoft here, where Video Game Chronicles says a decade late since the last game, Ubisoft has finally greenlit a new Splinter Cell game, sources are claiming. So yeah, Ubisoft has been sitting on Splinter Cell as a concept, a fairly popular game series, for over a decade. They've been squandering that when they could have at least made remasters and re-releases of old Splinter Cell games.
We fight. The things I do for fashion.
Let's see. Video Game Chronicles says PlayStation 5 consoles will be on sale at GameStop stores on Friday. Bundles will be available at selected physical locations later this week. So, it does feel like Sony has tried really hard to get consoles to storefronts. And I have to applaud them for that. I know I've seen Walmart's gonna try and have like a Black Friday every Friday in November, but by the things I'm seeing and the response I'm hearing, it seems like this is going to be a particularly bad Black Friday. A lot of people aren't going to have money, and maybe they'll be a little bit wiser and not waste the money on gadgets that people don't need, but there just doesn't seem like there's going to be much of a good deal. And it's worth mentioning that Black Friday has become a scam for at least the past 5, maybe even 10 years, where TVs to get people lining up and coming into the store are like custom model TVs that are made much cheaper and less quality. They're like last year's model with even more components ripped out to lower the price. They're designed to basically be a bait and switch compared to what you would expect to see any other time during the year available for purchase. See if we evolve this. Guess what you want to do is this. And then I guess you want to evolve this.
I'll save you all.
And then I guess you want to play this.
Blades in the east. Shashing.
The things I do for fashion.
Hands up.
No one gets past me.
Yeah. Moving on. Xbox is staying out of the VR hardware space, says Phil Spencer, which, okay, good enough. Like, their whole augmented reality thing for the military, I think that contract also has been put on hold. So, yeah.
games are what kept me alive.
The quote here is, I applaud what Sony is doing, I applaud what Oculus is doing, what Valve has done, but they're not going to be involved in it, and I think that is probably the right move, because we have not really seen any real engagement or acceptance of VR. It's still way too expensive. There's still no software there. It is the catch-22. It will never have good software until it has a good user base. It will never have a good user base until it has good software. Unless Sony and Microsoft both went all in on VR in their next consoles, and everybody just got one with the purchase of a console, I expect VR is going to just be mostly dead in the water.
Good folk for breakfast.
One step closer to victory.
There's no time for you slugs. Too slow.
You're mean.
Yeah.
You crusty horseshoe.
And then as you look at things like the Steam Deck versus the idea of if the Steam Deck was a VR headset on your head, like Valve tried to make a VR headset and it didn't work, and they're not really focused on that so much anymore.
I'll show you.
It just, I don't think is ever going to happen. I think there is a much higher chance that we will at some point have surround sound speakers that are also hologram projectors projecting holograms in a room versus before we put on headsets to do any kind of virtual reality or augmented reality. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start to 10, 20 years down the line see phones that can just project holograms in 3D or feel like they're 3D from their screens, and just portable devices that let that be fairly portable. Cell phones are another thing that, like, I think particularly this season, this holiday season, people should take a step back from. It's like everybody pretty much has what they need. Like, as long as you don't break your phone, I don't think you need to buy a new phone. Apple just came out with upgraded MacBooks, and yeah, it sounds like the hardware specs might be better on these new MacBook Pros versus what was offered before, but they're still using M1 chips, which is questionable how much actual power you can get out of those, particularly if you're not just doing things like Photoshop, which are probably programming. Adobe is probably programming Photoshop to work really, really well with the M1 chips, whereas if you're using something more obscure, it probably doesn't run well at all on a MacBook Pro.
Should have been quicker.
And there's been zero talk or any indication that you're supposed to play games on a MacBook Pro or even an iPhone. Yeah, one day we may have a point where Apple cares about gaming, but I don't think it's going to be anytime soon.
I shall clear us a path.
Moving on, Video Game Chronicle Flight Simulator is getting a free Game of the Year update alongside its first paid expansion. A host of fresh content will launch alongside a new competitive multiplayer racing experience. I don't think too many people ever really were big into Microsoft Flight Simulator, which is to say, I think the people who liked Microsoft Flight Simulator before are big into it, but I don't think there was any new gain of a user base, and it arguably is just such a niche product that it didn't deserve as much coverage as it got. Let's see, guess we'll play this.
Go with the wind.
And then this. Let's see. Video Game Chronicle says Microsoft Game Pass subscriber growth missed the Microsoft's annual target. The number of paying members increased by 37.5% during the company's last fiscal year, but their target was 47.79%, so either they intentionally set their target very high so that they could fail and reset expectations, or the pandemic wrecked them, which they could also blame that, certainly, or they just were bad at their business. It definitely would make some sense that there really isn't a lot of reason why you would
100 droplets in a single
specifically be a new subscriber to Microsoft Games
stroke. A
Pass.
flurry of droplets. Why are you in such a hurry?
Right. And see, when you look at this image, yeah, you've got Double Fine
Goodbye
owned
is
by
inevitable.
Microsoft, Minecraft owned by
Farewell,
Microsoft.
Island.
I'm not sure
Releasing
if
limiters.
this game, which people
Won't
have
be long
per-
now.
particularly forgotten about, I'm not sure if this even came out of
Get
early
used to this
access.
rain.
I don't think that's owned by a Microsoft company,
Delta cannon,
and I've
fire
forgotten the
harder.
name of it. And then I think this is Total War,
Hopes of a better tomorrow.
and that's pretty niche, and my Flight Simulator is pretty niche. Honestly, when you look at this lineup, this is pretty bad compared to the PlayStation lineup of first-party titles or exclusive titles, because every single one of these games is in a niche category, whereas you would want more of a broad appeal for a product like Games Pass in particular, because of the fact that you're offering a lot with the Games Pass and not just some small exclusives.
This ain't ideal, is it?
Like, I don't think you get any exclusives with Games Pass. Let's see. Here we have a game called The Last One Month,
Verifying access.
which looks like nothing of interest. Looks like it's just a top-down MMO. Online PvP, English, Korean, Japanese. Looks like it's positional placement, turn-based. Here we have a game called Undying, which is rated very positively. I think I had heard about this game, but maybe not. Yep. Surviving a zombie apocalypse seems like it's maybe a bit more narrative focused. What's funny here is it's kind of low polygon while not looking like a lot of the other low polygon games. It's doing an effort to try and find an art style in between the two. This is early access, English, Chinese, and Japanese. I'm going to put this on the fall list. Single player only. Yep. I guess the real question, though, it's kind of like a sun raising simulator, which usually they make daughter raising simulators, but
Are you ready for true
This world is filled with mystery.
yeah, it does seem like there's
Who'll be my
a secondary mechanic in the gameplay
Are you worth
where
your weight
you're
in gold? What's a strange reason?
trying to take care and heal
Unbelievable!
and keep this kid alive. What's funny though is even if you see
Within the helix.
this kind of low polygon art style or something like this, you have to assume that this is the final presentation form and that you're not going to come out of early access and the graphics are going to look way better. If anybody ever tried to do anything like that, that would probably work really poorly for that company.
This town needs good folk for this town.
Just because,
folk for break.
like, people who would have played the game in early access mode would have felt betrayed if the game looks way better
I ain't dead
when
yet.
it's out of early
Hands up.
access mode. Yeah, I've lost. Like,
Hands up!
you hit this, you hit this.
Hands up! You crusty horseshoe! You crusty horseshoe!
Unless I had something that could do 1 damage to everything. Which I don't. Here we have a game on Steam called Girl Agent, which looks like it's probably a low effort
You did good.
first person shooter, top down twin stick shooter really. I'd say more Definitely looks like they're just asset flipping some flatter anime style girls. And the actual game in the background looks like nothing. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a Chinese game. $2.09 English and Chinese, yeah. Next we have a game called Ooze Redux, which looks like a NES game. So I'm not interested. $10.04 English only, single player. Yeah, nothing there of interest. Same is probably true for Hammer Time. $1.79 English only. Same is probably true for Spice Shifter, which looks like more of a neon pink maze dungeon crawler, like Quake clone, Doom clone. $5.99 English only, no to that. Here we have KSTG, which looks like it's a fantasy MMO game. The screenshots are particularly blurry. It's single player, $5.99. Yeah, I think this is probably closer to an asset flip game than it is a finished, polished product. And it's a little unfair, but I kind of feel like if you're going to make a fantasy game like this, you need a fairly high amount of publishing budget and advertising budget just to tell me it's a game worth my time. And being called KSTG, I have no idea what that's supposed to stand for. Oh, it's Night Saves the Girl, they say in the description, if I actually read the description. Yeah, that's pretty low effort. Here we have a game called Animal Match for $4.79 English only. Here we have a game called Taxi Chaos, which is obviously a Crazy Taxi clone, but that doesn't mean I can immediately dismiss it. Even if this was stealing like the entire building layout of Crazy Taxi, I'm not sure that they could get sued for doing that. And it's not like Sega has succeeded in doing anything for Crazy Taxi, or making a new Crazy Taxi game. Now, arguably, Crazy Taxi, like a lot of old games that people are nostalgic for, may actually just be a dumb idea for a game. And more people talked about, potentially more people have talked about Crazy Taxi than have actually played Crazy Taxi, including me. $19.98 English full audio allegedly. I'm going to put that on the follow list. There might be something there. This is the first game from this developer, if that means anything. Here we have a game called Graffiti Creator, which looks like nothing. $19.99 English only. Here we have Academy of Magic: The Great Dark Wizard Curse, which is just a match 3 game. $5.39 English only. Here we have a game called Knights and Castles, which looks like garbage. Free to play, but then a version 1.0 for $4.99 English, allegedly full audio. I question that also.
Got me feeling hungry.
Here we have a game called Demon Runner: The Forsaken, which looks like a garbage precision platformer. $1.99 English only. Here we have Search All the Animals, which is just a hidden object game for 59 cents with a whole bunch of languages claiming full audio in every language that they claim to support, which is about every language there. Here we have Christmas Slots from Boogeyman Games Studios. This is the developer, I think, that was flooding Steam. Nope. They are flooding Steam with garbage games, but it's not the developer I was thinking of. Yeah. And we could potentially build up a list of bad game developers if they do this. Or you could say, ignore this creator. So, yeah. This guy has like 15 followers as a creator. Also. Which that's maybe not that big of an insult because I doubt very many people on Steam are following creators anyways. But yeah, my hope is that at some point in the future, ignoring a creator pops up a bit of a warning or something, so I can just immediately dismiss games from those kinds of creators, because they are pretty much a waste of time.
Who will be my victim today? Are you worth your weight in gold?
I like it. Give me that.
Next we have YouTuber's Life 2, which is mixed reviewed. I would argue that YouTuber's Life 1 didn't come out that long time ago. It's $29.99, English, Spain, Spanish, French, Italian, German. Yeah, 1 came out in 2017 and is rated very positively, mostly positively, at least 76%. So the fact that the sequel is out and it's mixed reviews means they probably backslide in quality. And here we see PewDiePie being depicted in the game. And honestly, in 2017, I wouldn't be surprised if the reason why YouTuber's Life is even rated as positively as it is because a bunch of fans of people like PewDiePie were voting the game up and memeing on it. We may have hit a point where kids have realized that being a YouTuber is not a real job and not an ambition you really should have. Wouldn't be surprised if we start to hear a lot of kids deciding to go into nursing and doctor and becoming doctors and things like that, medical fields. Although maybe not. Here we have a game called Blood and Zombies, which I don't know if I want to immediately dismiss this as an acid flip zombie first person shooter. Like, some of this kind of looks good. Like, you know, you never really get a game where the zombies are moving slowly. This honestly feels like more of a tower defense game where you're building up a perimeter to stop the zombies, but in a hyper-realistic 3D form, where normally this would be depicted in a top-down cartoony form. Yeah, I think I want to put this on the follow list. It's early access, single player, English, Russian, Chinese, and German. But yeah, they violate the idea of what a zombie movie would be whenever you make an average zombie game, in the sense that you are by default giving it a you're by default putting it in a
You're too strong.
putting in fast zombies instead of slow walking zombies and lesser zombies than what you would see in a zombie movie, because of just the limitations of graphics rendering and AI running in a video game. So inherently, I think there are limitations that make a zombie video game worse than a zombie movie. And I know video games are trying to address that, but they're not really trying to address the slow-moving zombie element of that. They just try to put more zombies that are fast-moving in their games. Moving on, we have Inscription. This is 96% positive with 797 reviews. This is a game made from the creator of Pony Island, which I purchased that game and never actually did cover it, as this Daniel Mullins Games likes to apparently make games that are subversive of what you would want. He also made The Hex, which I think was lesser received. Pony Island is overwhelmingly positive. Let's see, did he make anything else? No. So this is basically a start game on Steam. It looks and feels a lot like a card game when you look at the screenshots, but then there's also kind of a narrative element when you walk on these board movements, and then there is an escape room element where you're actually trying to escape the room. There's kind of a horror element to it. There's puzzles and secrets, and I watched Jesse Cox and Giant Bomb both cover this game, and I would venture to say you shouldn't watch anybody cover this game at all. Like, if you can put up with a card game, which is a fairly simplistic card game, and you don't mind taking breaks from the card game to do some other simplistic puzzles and have an overarching almost narrative, there seems to probably be a roguelike element too. I think Inscription is for you, and that's probably all you need to know to go ahead and buy the game. If you liked,
Check out my fancy footwork.
I don't know if you'd really compare it to the Cat Lady, but what I was going to compare it to was Hand of Fate. I think you're going to have a fairly similar experience, except for Hand of Fate had action sequences. Loop Hero, a bit of a different experience as far as a game. Yep. And more like this, really not offering Hand of Fate either. Regardless, for me, this meets the requirements by far. It has more than 30 reviews, so I'm going to put this on the wish list. If somebody wanted to gift me that game, I'd be more than willing to play it earlier. Although, I don't think I can really promise too much these days, as I'm not particularly doing a great job of making content and getting it out anytime soon. Yeah, I am definitely holding my tongue a little bit right now as far as just, it doesn't seem like a lot of people are watching my YouTube channel for the Halloween events. So, yeah, I'm not surprised really, but it always sucks when I try not to pay attention to a lot of that stuff, but it sometimes does get to me that there's just 0 views in 24 hours happening for my pre-recorded content, but I don't want to rant and complain, so I'm gonna move on. Here we have a game called Into the Pit, which looks like it's kind of a Doom artistic style roguelike game. I think we've looked at this game, and I may have even dismissed this game, but I'm going to put it back on the follow list. It has 30%. I don't even need to put it on the follow list. I need to put it on the wish list. I might opt not to ever buy this game, certainly, because it doesn't really feel like the kind of game I would want to play. But yeah, it's on the wish list now, so I'm gonna leave it there. $14.99, bunch of languages.
Are you ready for true combat?
That was almost amusing.
Let's see. Video Games Chronicles has an interview with Remedy discussing the Alan Wake remaster and what's next, if you're interested.
Check this out.
Apparently, Destiny 2 The Witch Queen will charge separately for its dungeons, angering fans. The 3 upcoming dungeons will not be included in season passes either. If you bought the Ultimate version, the deluxe, digital deluxe edition of The Witch Queen, you'll get all 4 seasons for the next year, and 2 dungeons, and the 2 dungeons. Yep. And I guess this is the
I need more beer. More
thing that you'd almost assume was going to happen, as you would potentially have a
I'll see you in purgatory.
scenario where
die, cretin.
a game as service is running out of its fan base, and so it's needing to make or wanting to make more money on the remaining people still playing Destiny.
Loyalty is ironclad.
And almost certainly that is what games as services were always going to turn into, is that as soon as it stopped being profitable, they were going to change the game drastically and demand more money for less.
Worth their salt.
There have been some long-running games like World of Warcraft, for instance, that have not gone in terribly in that direction, but most of them either just stop making content altogether and give up, or they do end up
I need more beer.
costing
More
Got a
terror.
job to do.
and charging way too much.
Die, cretin.
Loyalty is ironclad. Loyalty is ironclad.
Let's see. Gamatsu says Hot Wheels Unleashed DC Supervillains Racing Season begins November 11th. The Batman expansion launches December 2nd.
Critter worth their salt.
I really wish that this Hot Wheels Unleashed was a little bit better of a game so I could recommend it, but really can't at the moment. Okay, what do we want to do? I think you want to play this.
Every drop 100 droplets in a single stroke.
Okay. If I attack this here,
A flurry of droplets. I'll train harder. A flurry of droplets.
okay.
Steel yourself. Steel yourself.
I guess that works. Let's see. I think we already talked about this. Square Enix trademarked the Divine Force and Hamster trademarked Console Archives. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate version 13.0 update DLC Challenger Pack 11 Sora is now available. Some of this might be old news. Babylon's Fall closed beta test phase 3 special preliminary broadcast is set for October 23rd. Demon Turf launches November 4th. We'll have to look at this game because I don't recognize it. Okay.
This town eats
This.
good folk for breakfast. This town eats good folk for breakfast.
Okay. What now? I guess you're
One
involved.
step closer to victory.
I ain't dead yet. Hands up!
There's nothing to fear.
Steel yourself.
Yeah, let's see what this Demon Turf is. Kind of a flat cardboard cutout game. It looks like in the cutscene.
Begins.
So you're platforming
Rusty horseshoe.
as kind of this flat cardboard character that can turn
Rusty
into
horseshoe.
several different characters.
My armor has been pierced.
I'm not sure that I trust that there's much of a game here and that this isn't just somebody in love with this art style. But if there is a game here, I mean, you might be seeing something very similar to a Mario 64 style platformer. I don't know if there's actually like collectibles. There's more characters you talk to. That's one of the things about Mario 64 that I guess people easily overlook, is the fact that there's barely anybody you even talk to. Yeah, Demon Turf at least piques my interest a little bit. Okay. This,
I go with the wind.
this. this. Then this.
Fastest blades in the east.
Let's see. Gamatsu has Sherlock Holmes Chapter 1 Detective Gameplay trailer, which apparently is not linked here.
I'm the most fabulous
Interesting.
leader of them out of the way.
You'd expect there to be a video, but it's just a link. Interesting. Well, it's not really worth it. We're trying to get through things. Xbox Game Pass adds Dragon Ball Fighter Z, Age of Empires 4, and Alan Wake American Nightmare, and more in late October. Apparently, they're also adding The Forgotten City, which I think is way more important to talk about, or Into the Pit, which is kind of like brand new games or nearly brand new games. I don't even know what Backbone is as a game. I guess check out this Gamatsu article if you're interested. I'm trying to burn through the news as quickly as possible today, because I know there's a lot. And what constantly has been happening for the past month or so is, since my insomnia is making me basically wake up in the middle of the night and then fall asleep almost instantaneously after I stream, I'm never finding a good time to really accomplish too much else. I can do a little bit of recording in the middle of the night, but that's about it. Gamatsu has an article here. Cassette Beasts confirmed for Xbox Series, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Adventure Battle Transform.
To arms! There's a battle underway!
The idea of monsters based on cassette tapes is a little bit old-fashioned, because then you have to explain to kids what cassette tapes are. But I mean, it's as old-fashioned as Monster Hunter, where the monsters could be created out of CD-ROMs discs. As an actual game, I'm not sure if there's too much of interest there. Seems like the trainers themselves transform into the monsters. And if they're cassette tapes, I assume there's probably a musical element to this. The thing about this is, since Pokemon is unlikely to ever come to PC, a game like this could succeed fairly well, even with fairly kind of rough pixely imagery and probably not that many characters. Like, it's gonna definitely be in the journey of a game like this. Can you find enjoyment versus a game that's potentially going to be too short for a RPG, even if it's a Pokemon-esque RPG for little kids, or too grindy. Like, you could go in either directions there. You could make a Pokemon game that's way too grindy, and honestly, I think some of the early Pokemon games probably are way too grindy for modern standards, with not a ton happening.
Precious life deserves more jewels, more.
Yeah, I would say, if I was to just roughly estimate off of very, very vague memories of Pokemon Red and Blue, you probably fought somewhere between 20 to 30 people in between every main major battle, or you probably should have fought that many to grind up and get strong enough.
I go with the wind.
And I think a more modern RPG, you'd want to try and get it closer to maybe you're fighting 5 characters in turn-based RPG combats in between every major battle.
More jewels, more.
We could probably run the numbers better. You just take the number of gym badges that are collected in a that you have to collect in Pokemon Red, and then the average playtime of people who played Pokemon Red, and that'll probably give you a much better indication of how many people you're really fighting per gym badge, or how much time you're at least spending per gym badge.
The sunlight is unwelcoming.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Deformity, which looks like a hex grid placement game. 4X game, I guess is what it's tagged as. $7.99, English and Russian. We don't see a lot of use of the phrase 4X these days. Expand, explore, exterminate. I don't even know what the 4Xs stand for. I don't think it's particularly ever been a hugely popular style of gameplay. Here we have a game called War Mongrels. Real-time tactics, real-time strategy game, it says. 38.24 English, full audio, several other languages. I'm gonna put this on the follow list. It's kind of hard to tell if this is an XCOM style clone that you really want to play. Yep. The problem with an XCOM style game, and a lot of these styles of games that I've just never even dipped a toe into, is I'm kind of scared of them, for lack of a better term. It's just like, I don't know if I really want to get into playing a game that is going to heavily encourage me to potentially play 5 other styles of games, or 5 other games in the same style, just to get a general understanding of whether you like that kind of game or not. And see, that still is definitely my problem, is that I'm not super varied on the games I cover. What am I doing right now in the pre-recording? I'm playing yet another Lego game, and maybe I'll play 2 more Lego games, and then I'll have played almost all the Lego games available, if not all the Lego games available. At that point, I may be forced to finally move away to something else, but a long time ago, 3-4 years ago, I should have tried a fighting game. I should have tried an JRPG game. I should have tried some other things. Most recently, the newest thing I've tried is a visual novel, and then I play a couple of those, and boy, do those take up time, and that's probably part of the reason why I find them fairly frustrating. I probably could burn through fighting games fairly easily and just say, alright, let's play this fighting game for an hour and spotlight it, and then be done with it. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Wreck Digger. I don't know if that's a fair review of a fighting game, though, to play it in single player mode only and then just review it after an hour. That's pretty much exactly what I rail against mainstream video game journalists doing. It's not really understanding or knowing how a game should be enjoyed, or even giving it a fair amount of time. So I'd have to try and avoid that. Here we have a game called Wreck Digger. Looks like it's a 2D platformer, Metroidvania game. I don't think this is probably going to make it to the wishlist, but I can't immediately reject it either. It's English, $4.99, so I'm going to put it on the follow list. The thing here is, if this is directly just a Metroid clone, at which it kind of looks like a direct Metroid clone, that doesn't mean that it's terrible. The zoomed out pixely graphics probably are going to be a no-go for me, because that's too zoomed out. But then again, I mean, what am I really expecting? Do I expect every Metroidvania clone out there to look like Metroid Dread? Because if I do expect that, I think I'm going to fail. You know what I am noticing here, though, is that as I'm watching more videos, the graphics do look just too rough. And so I think I am going to just leave it off the fall list for that reason. It's not zoomed in enough. I do want a little bit better graphics than this, unfortunately. Here we have a game called Vacuum Pilot, which is basically the exact same style of game and same problems. $7.99 English, German, French. You can immediately say no to that. Here we have a game called Dead Estate, which looks like it's an isometric game dungeon crawler. It's rated very positively, so I'm gonna put it on the fall list. I'm not certain about it as far as the actual gameplay. Yep. Yeah. It's funny, like, the one thing I would have wanted more than anything else would have been for video game designers to just take a pause, take a year and not make anything new, and let me catch up. And arguably, they've taken 2 years to slow down and take a pause, and it's still not enough. Like, there's just so many people out there trying to make games, and so many people actually succeeding in making games that are worth your time. And we have really failed to invent the machinery and the mechanics to create more time, which is the thing I think everybody would love to have. I would love to just be able to snap my fingers and freeze time, even if it was just to play video games. Like, of course, if you could snap your fingers and freeze time, you could probably get away with a lot more than just playing video games. And at a certain point, I wonder, I think I might have a grievance worth filing at some point, talking about the years, decade plus of years, that I spent in school wasting my time. Like, not all of school's a waste of time. I'm not going to go that far, but yeah. Left to my own decisions and my own devices, being able to do what I want to do, I can't help but complain that for over a decade, closer to a decade and a half, I would, well, over a decade and a half even, I was spending 8 hours a day, at least 200 days a year in classes, and some of that, like reading, writing, arithmetic, things like that, sure, you need. A lot of it just straight up BS, particularly when you get into like high school and stuff, and you're sitting in study halls, or the teacher's not really doing anything. They're giving you busy work. They're giving you super easy pop quizzes that they don't have to grade. They're not grading them themselves anyways. They've got like teacher assistants grading the papers for them. Yeah, if I could have those hours back, I could have played a lot more video games if video games were available to be played at that time. And this is a complaint that someone is making who played a ridiculous amount of video games in their youth during their school years. I probably was playing close to 4 or 5 hours a day on a school day. None of the screen time stuff was happening. None of that at all. And still, there's just never enough time.
It looks like I'm up.
Today was a right good day.
Well, moving on. Here we have a game on Steam called Bury Board, which looks like it's supposed to be a skating simulator, but it doesn't really feel like it actually is much of a skateboarding game. I don't even know if it's really a game as much as it is just a simulator of showing the angles at which a board might be tilted when doing a trick they're calling it fingerboarding because they didn't want to have to animate an actual person on the board. Which this is English full, allegedly full audio, third-party EULA for $6.99, and I think you're getting very far from the concept of a fingerboard for that little toy when you don't physically have a fingerboard you can control or touch.
Every shot is a miracle.
Here we have a game called Dual Souls: The Last Bearer,
You were done
which looks
for.
like a fighting game. It's probably not going to be
The mercy I can afford you.
well received as a big name fighting game, but doesn't look terrible. $5.99, English, allegedly full audio, several other languages. We'll put it on the follow list. At some point we do I would love to see something that tried to be a new Street Fighter and would have to be kind of on the levels of a Street Fighter 1 or Street Fighter 2 and only have like 10 characters. Whereas the latest Street Fighter game obviously is going to have a lot more characters and look a lot more visually polished.
I've been spotted.
But yeah, somebody is going to have to start small if they're ever going to be a competitor to something like Street Fighter. Here we have a game on Steam called Elion. I guess that's how I would pronounce that. This looks like a Chinese MMO MOBA. Nice visuals, but I don't really suspect there actually is much of a game there. It's free to play, but then it has all these packages for different prices and in-app purchases. It's English, French, German, and Spanish. And third-party account and third-party EULA also. I'm a little surprised there isn't an Asian language that it supports, because this definitely feels like a Korean or Chinese MOBA. Let's see, here we have Recontact London Cyber Puzzle, which looks like it is, they're calling it a full motion video and a hidden object game all in one. It looks like it is kind of all over the place in what it's presenting. $8.99 English full audio. Yeah, I wonder, it seems like you might be tracking people with closed circuit TV, which there might be an idea to that. Says it supports a bunch of languages, English full audio. I'm going to put this on the follow list and see what people have to say about it. It looks so bizarrely unique. Do
The dawn
this,
shines like a beacon of hope.
and then evolve this.
March on!
Dawn always
We
prevails.
won't
Oh,
give
dawn
him
is
an inch.
dawn is upon us.
And then play this. Then put this on the field.
Blades in the east.
Dawn is upon us.
Shashing!
Blessed
Today was
sunlight.
a really good day.
Oops. I killed one character, but that's fine. Let's see. Gamatsu has the Mobile Suit Gundam Battle Operation Code Fairy Volume 1 launching November 5th with a debut trailer, which I think we had seen an earlier trailer of this Gundam game, and it still feels very disconnected, really, from this is not the Gundam animation from decades previous, certainly, and this definitely feels like it is pretty rough, like Mobile Suits characters.
From donations, and I just might save you.
Let's see. Announcement trailer. Yeah, if this is the direction that Mobile Suit is going with this animation style, that is probably just really a shocking indication on how much anime has changed in the past 20 and 30 years.
The greater the
Like,
donation, the greater
because
the
this
blessing.
is just like totally a different art style and definitely looks like much more of a modern story instead of the kind of crazy political talking head story that Gundam has been in the past. As much as the West might think Gundam is an action series, it's actually more of a political statement, I would say, more than anything. Okay, let's hit this.
I need more fear, more terror.
Okay. And then we'll hold on to this, and this, and then this.
Should have seen this coming.
And then
We'll return light to the canals.
At your service.
and
Die, cretin.
Shashing!
just attack there, I guess. We could have evolved that. Yep. We don't need to talk about that again. Curve Digital has rebranded as Curve Games. Same Curve, different logo. They made The Ascent, Human Fall Flat, and more. Which, yeah, there's kind of a question as to why they were called Curve Digital before. I wouldn't be surprised, and I don't know if it's, I don't think it's probably going to be the case here for Curve Games, but I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see a few companies that thought at some point they would be integrated into making movies or TV and doing animation and being kind of an animation art house on top of making video games, and they were just trying to kind of break in or make their name through video games. I wouldn't be surprised now there's a realization that that's not going to work because frankly people don't have a high chance of succeeding in the video game in the movie industry.
My sins.
All right.
One step closer to victory.
The past is my only salvation. You're weak. You're weak.
I envy you.
Moving over, the Young Maiden Otome visual novel, Even If Tempest has been announced for Switch. It is lowercase even, lowercase if, Tempest. Let's see. Let's see if we can watch this trailer. We've actually gotten all the daily quest challenges, or 3 out of the 4 daily quests done. Some of the like Shakespearean plays, like Tempest, which I think is a Shakespearean play. If not, it's one of those styles of old stories. Really have had no success in being remade or retold. Even I think a lot of Aesop's fables and things have lost their relevancy. Even Disney remaking things like Sleeping Beauty and Snow White
We destroyed
all
them.
feel like they're quickly losing their relevancy in favor of things like Toy Story and Cars and Up and just original stories. We need one more Swordcraft victory. We might as well, at this point, we're doing so well, switch over to ranked. If we can get one Swordcraft victory lucky in ranked, and then switch over to playing something else that might win more often in ranked, we might get everything done today. Yeah, I don't know about Even If Tempest, but it might be interesting. Here a game called Tunche, Tunche for Xbox One, Switch, and PC launches November 2nd. It's a beat 'em up action game featuring Hat Kid from A Hat in Time, which, yeah, they really wanted to make Hat Kid. I thought it was Hat Girl, but whatever. They really wanted to make her the next Mario, but Hat in Time's not particularly that good of a game. But I can't really hate the idea of integrating other characters. The problem here, though, is this feels like this is a group of Africans or natives of some land, and Hat Kid, being a intergalactic space traveler, seems to really be out of place in this group of people. And then looking at this image, like, is this just a long-haired guy and this long-haired guy, or are these just topless girls that are really young, so they don't have any boobs? Well, no, it seems like they do have kind of the coconut bra. One of the characters does. Well, not worrying about that, this game actually does look fairly fun to play, at least to start with. This may get repetitive and boring later. It might be some of the characters have kind of brown shirts that look like they're shirtless, or at least one of them maybe. That's the case. Yeah. Yeah, that looks like an interesting game. On the face of it, we'll have to wait and see if it really is. There's a lot of announcements certainly around Danganronpa Decadence. They have details on the story, hype cards, and they say the series has shipments have topped 5 million. Which, yeah, 5 million for such a weird niche game series is probably an amazing success. Although I'm not sure if Danganronpa can go much further as a kind of visual novel, murder mystery game. I think it's possibly established its characters as best as it could, although maybe not even done that well, because they kind of change the characters every game, it seems. So yeah, you would half expect the Danganronpa crew to end up in a fighting game, in a Smash Brothers style fighting game, instead of staying in the visual novel mystery game style that they are in, or that they would end up in a more 3D action built murder mystery game, and I don't even know how you would make something like that. Let's see, Star Melody Yumimi Dreamer launches in weekly episodes beginning November 4th in Japan. This is a rhythm game. And this is from Gamatsu. Danganronpa Decadence has an overview trailer. Which, yeah. Now, the other thing about Danganronpa Decadence is I am not 100% sure if there isn't more of a game than just the board game. I think it's just a board game. And this is probably their attempt to get away from the visual novel element there. And I think they're bundling in the previous 2 or 3 Danganronpa games with the board game, but Decadence itself, I think, is just the nope, Danganronpa Decadence is actually the 4-in-1 games, Danganronpa S Ultimate Summer Camp is the board game. So you get the three versions of the 3 games previous, which a lot of Danganronpa fans, I imagine, will not actually go back and replay the games. I don't think there's probably a lot of replayability in Danganronpa, and that may also hinder it as it moves forward. I'm not 100% sure that the 3rd game doesn't kind of wrap up the story too. Let's see, moving on, the otome visual novel rhythm game I Chew has been announced for Switch, due out in the spring of 2022. I think we may have talked about this game before in that announcement. Famitsu has its review scores, giving Far Cry 6 35 out of 40. That's actually a fairly high score. I'd heard not really great things, or mostly I've heard a deafening silence around Far Cry 6. FIFA 22 given 36 out of 40, where Kena Bridge of Spirits, the game I wanted to play out of the 3 of those, it was a 31 out of 40. I still probably would give it a chance. World Rally Championship 10, 32 out of 40. I'm not interested in that. I'm not 100% sure if I'm really in line or agreeing with Famitsu review scores anyways. I think generally I respect their scores, but that doesn't inherently mean that I am agreeing with their scores or would agree with their scores. And that's probably true for any reviewer ever, and probably highlights the uselessness of game reviews in general. But yeah, I haven't paid enough attention to say, oh, here I played this game and I know this game was highly rated by Famitsu. I think Famitsu is probably very much trying to be in line with the average gamer. So something like Mario Odyssey probably was reviewed fairly highly, and I imagine if I was to play Mario Odyssey, I would feel that it was a particularly good game also. Let's see. Here we have a game on Steam called Bun House, which looks like you're playing as a rabbit, or you're raising rabbits. Cute, like, kid game. Maybe there's something there. Farming Sim Sandbox, $19.99, English only. I'm gonna put it on the fall list and think about it, but probably would just reject this because it's a farming sim and not having anything to do with the fact that it's rabbits farming. If anything, I think the rabbits farming probably improves it, but the graphics hurt it, certainly. But yeah, generally I don't want to play a farming sim game, gimmick or otherwise. Here we have a game called LTO Arcade, which looks like a collection of simplistic games. $4.49, English only. Here we have a game called Frontier of Fortune, which looks like it's a strategy game of no interest. $5.99, English, Japanese screen. It's interesting to see this style of game try and sell itself with a anime boy character. Like, I doubt there's a lot of overlap for people who love to play strategy games and anime art style fans, but I could be wrong. Here we have a game called Nebraska, which looks like a horror game, but it might be a horror asset flip game. It doesn't look particularly visually polished. It's blurry. I don't think I can agree with games blinking, fading to black in their trailer. Yeah, it kind of feels like it's a walking simulator horror game. $2.79 English only. I'll give it a chance, but some of these games like this could potentially interest me if they just polished their graphics. If they just rendered everything at 1080p instead of 480p is sometimes all it really needs to sway me. On the other hand, you have games like Dungeon Arsenal here, which is pixely and looks like nothing of interest, so immediately I'm going to dismiss this. $4.49 English, Portuguese, Brazil. Here we have one called Battle Boom, which looks like it's a tower defense game more than a real-time strategy game. Looks like it's a Chinese mobile game being ported to Steam. $4.49, full Chinese audio, just interface for English and several other languages. That's going to be a no. Here we have a game called Color Guys, which we can immediately dismiss. $4.99 English only, third-party EULA. Come over here and play some more.
The uncharted desert awaits.
Too slow.
Is there some treat a lady?
Imbecile.
Here we have a game called Bats Bloodsucker Anti-Terror Squad, which, yeah, I don't think looks like anything of interest. Looks like it's probably a joke game.
Nothing yet.
$8.99 English full audio. As a joke game, though, it's maybe polished more than several other games we tend to see. Like, there is that danger that you would make a game that's supposed to be comedic and then it gets dismissed as a joke game by people like me, and thus never is given a chance, even though it might deserve one. But that is the problem with all art. You have to pick a theme that instantaneously informs the viewer as to what they should expect. And if you pick the wrong theme, you can potentially turn off a lot of fans, or potential fans. Here we have a game called Windy Mistlanian, which looks like a RPG Maker mobile game Chinese port. 89 cents Chinese only. We can say no to that. Here we have Hymno, the Silent Melody, which looks like a dark screenshot syndrome platforming game as far as I can tell. It says it has like some physics, maybe it's a bit Metroidvania, but it's way too dark. Like, even playing Lego Pirates of the Caribbean, this game's not even out yet, says it's going to support a whole bunch of languages. Yeah, Lego Pirates of the Caribbean, even that game is way more dark than I would expect it to have been. Just like really dark sections, incredible lack of lighting sources where you would need it. There's a whole moonlight mechanic that would make a lot of sense for there to be more beams of moonlight in half the levels. And then definitely some levels that are just in the darkness, I imagine because they were dark in the movie and there is no other reason. Here we have a game on Steam called The Tale of Fighting Nymphs, which is tagged as having sexual content. I think we could probably guess this is mostly an asset flip. Somebody has put some effort here, enough that you probably couldn't just call it an asset flip though. Like, somebody's mapping these anime girls to a fighting animations and actions, which that's not as easily done. English is not supported. It's free to play. It's Japanese and Korean. What they're showing is that the skirts fly up when they get hit occasionally, so you can look up their scars. The problem with a game like this, even if it did support English, is this is the anime style. Whatever this is just trying to approximate it, and it's not doing a great job. If you wanted a fighting game with anime characters, anime girls in particular, there's Melty Blood, there's several others that I can't think of off the top of my head. Rumble Roses XX is a particularly old one that I played when I was younger on the Xbox 360. But yeah, there's way better ones out there. Maybe not on Steam so much, but out there, definitely. And you have to really ask yourself, should you mix peanut butter and chocolate and turn a love for anime waifus and a love for fighting games and merge those two into the same one thing? I would say probably not. That there's a real good argument to let those kinds of things go.
Is ironclad. March on! Harder armor! Strong steel yourself!
Okay, hit this one. And we hit that one.
Why are you in such a hurry?
Shutting down.
Like, it's different when you're playing a JRPG or something else. Something that's fairly slow, something that's more established as having anime style characters. Even when you are playing a JRPG, even if you're playing a Neptunia or a Senran Kagura game, there are elements, large amounts of elements, maybe not so much in Senran Kagura, that aren't just all about the fan service and the anime characters.
Remember, every drop 100 droplets in a single
Okay.
stroke.
So if
A
I hit
flurry of droplets.
this one
I'll train harder.
and then hit
A flurry
this
of
one,
droplets.
we can do this.
Hungry?
I'm just gonna try and keep this character alive.
Drip, 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 and drip some more.
Moving on, Gamatsu says Century Age of Ashes is coming to the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and mobile in 2022. The PC version is due out on December 2nd. I don't recognize this game though, so I guess there's nothing more to say.
Fun it is to converse.
The surprise news revelation today is God of War 2018, the remake, is coming to PC on January 14th, and sales have topped 19.5 million, so it seems like they definitely want to get to 20 million, and I imagine they probably wouldn't get to 20 million if they just stayed I don't know if it's fully a exclusive to PlayStation, but
Unbelievable.
I don't know. Alright, well, we've got to do this.
This is our last push!
One doesn't have to be a hero to make a difference. Flank them!
Yeah. I don't think God of War has been an Epic Games exclusive.
Thunderbolts shall guide
I guess it has.
you if they don't kill you first.
No, it hasn't. It's coming out on Epic Games Store and Steam at the same time. I kind of suspect it might have been an Epic Game exclusive. There you have some God of War man nipple. The only prominent nipples in the video game industry in the past decade as far as AAA games.
Broken through our ranks.
So yeah, this might be the beginning of the end for PlayStation as far as losing big titles. God of War 2 in particular was a major promotion and focus point for PlayStation, and now if there is even a thought that there's going to be a potential day and date release of God of War 2 on PC with the PS4, I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see a decent number of people holding off and not pre-ordering and not buying God of War on the PlayStation. They're saying high fidelity graphics, NVIDIA deep learning, super sampling, and reflex support, and more. I don't even know what reflex is.
You'll make a good test subject.
What
You're done for.
is reflex?
Sorry, but this ends here.
Utilize the NVIDIA reflex low latency technology, allowing you to react quicker and hit harder combos with the responsive gameplay craved on GeForce GPUs. I have no idea what reflex is. I've never heard of it. But yeah, that is a big change. That is something that definitely wasn't expected, and oddly should have been teased out more. It seems kind of crazy that there wouldn't have been a big God of War announcement teased, and there wouldn't have been a build up for it, and that they would just come out and announce it. Honestly, I don't know if I kind of think a lot of these companies are desperately losing money, and they just don't want to have a bad quarterly fiscal year, and they're pulling out all the stops. We may, for the first time in decades, be on the verge of actually seeing competition and a desire, actual capitalism working the way it claims it will always work. Yeah, as people are desperate to make money, we might start seeing better offerings, better games, cheaper games. These are all the things we would have wanted to see a long time ago. And the second the economy and the pandemic goes away, I imagine everything will just get more expensive again. But for a brief moment here, we might finally have the little man might get a bit of a discount.
Never back down.
On the other hand, with God of War coming to PC, I don't really personally have a reason not to play it, but you can't really deny that there's a little bit of controversy there. That they've kind of race swapped or gender swapped one of the characters in God of War 2. I don't think it really matters so much there. I think the bigger complaint certainly is kind of the complete change of what the old God of War games were. So it's kind of a bait and switch between this new game, God of War, which is more Dad of War. But on the other hand, I don't think too many people had such a burning love for the old God of War games that they're complaining. It does really suck that the old God of War games are not coming to PC, and now would be kind of a great time to have announced the old God of War is being ported to PC and re-released. First and foremost, you could have stretched for a long time releasing old God of War games on PC. But maybe they realized they wouldn't get very much sales that way.
Let's speed things up. Too slow.
No.
I think we already talked about this. Sony is selling off its Game Show Network games to a mobile games giant, Scopely. We already talked about that. Here's a featured blog designing the virality of Choo Choo Charles edition. I have no idea what Choo Choo Charles is. It looks like it is some kind of horror thing. Choo Choo Charles announcement trailer. Yeah, this looks like a Skyrim Thomas the Tank Engine clone horror game. And I guess the question here is there a real game here? It kind of feels like there almost is a real game here. A horror game where you're controlling a train might kind of work. Yeah, I don't know if there really is a full concept here, though. Or if this is just more of a gimmick. Kind of feels like mostly a gimmick.
Together forever.
I think it is worth mentioning that if it weren't for GameDeveloper.com putting out this featured blog promoting a game, basically hiding an advertisement as a blog, I would have never heard of this Choo Choo Charles game, and probably never should have heard of it. And then we have a sponsored content, getting a lot of commercials here. Level up your game dev career with 3 important skills. What is it? CG Spectrum, technical ability, soft skills, and specializing. Well, I mean, those are very generic things. Those are very generic concepts. Monster Hunter World has topped 20 million shipments worldwide, which, didn't we just say that the God of War franchise had only sold 19.5 million? And was that the entirety of God of War? Or was that just God of War, the remake, the first game? Because, yeah, that's a very different experience.
This town eats good folk for breakfast.
Okay.
Hands up!
Guess we'll go ahead and just kill this.
I'm out of cash.
And then I guess we'll end here. This means it is Monster Hunter World has broken Capcom's all-time shipment records as far as units shipped.
Someone as beautiful as
Which,
her could
yeah.
never understand.
Monster Hunter World, real successful. Apparently Sega was really just
Wretched I feel.
moving more than anything because they're going to open a new Ikebukuro arcade after closing the iconic Gigo location.
Enemy or no, you did good.
The Gigo location was in business for 28 years. But I think part of the problem too is that some of these arcades are just in locations that have become tourist traps or just not particularly the best. Sega also sold the bulk of its arcade businesses after it suffered significant losses due to the COVID-19 pandemic, so you have to be careful here that there isn't an arcade bearing the Sega branding that actually is not really being run by Sega. Yeah. Sega and Konami in particular, I think, are going to heavily struggle in the next few years as they try to get out of the video game businesses and diversify. The problem is everything suffered and there was very little stability. Video gaming maybe was the most stable sector to have stayed in during a pandemic. GameDeveloper.com has the same article. EA taps the Halo veteran Marcus Letho to help build a new Seattle studio. Let's see. 20 employees have been fired in the wake of the Activision Blizzard lawsuit. Fran Townsend is publicly promising more disciplinary actions, while Activision Blizzard continues to try and shake off the California lawsuit. Now, of course, is this 20 employees who are being thrown to the slaughter, or are these 20 bad actors?
Too slow.
Oh my!
Like, at a certain point, this is a problem. If the top management allows for an environment in which middle management, lower management, or associate level employees can act badly, then you're not only hurting the employees that are victimized by those bad actors, you're hurting the bad actors by not providing proper leadership and guidance. So these 20 employees are probably as much victims, if not as victimizers, if they are truly victimizers. And there's still really no point here to say that those were the right 20 people, and have to be careful about that. We don't want this to, you don't want a lawsuit to turn into a witch hunt, or allow a company to turn a lawsuit into a witch hunt to avoid any more scrutiny, which Activision Blizzard in general does not feel like they're willing to really take responsibility for their bad leadership. Here we have a game called Go Back to Hell in some Asian letters. It looks like it is a point-and-click adventure, kind of rough, but very weird graphics too. Yeah, it's kind of a hidden object game. Like this is the one kind of hidden object game that would actually convince me to play a hidden object game. It doesn't have to be particularly good or anything. It just has to visually look different and play a little bit different. 89 cents. Whole bunch of languages here. Not sure. I would assume this is either Japanese, Korean, or Asian. I'd say it's probably Korean or Japanese, because I don't know if a Chinese developer would use the word hell in the title.
Got me feeling hungry.
No one gets past me.
Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called Bear Adventures, which just looks like an asset flip garbage game. $8.99, bunch of languages. No to that. Here we have one all in Asian letters, looks like some kind of simplistic Chinese simulation game. It says it's a life sim and a clicker, Chinese only, 99 cents. Here we have a game called Under the Sea, which looks like nothing of interest. Early access, $3.49, English, Portuguese, Brazil. Here we have one all Asian characters. Looks like it's probably a Chinese MOBA, if I was to guess, fantasy game. Early access, $14.49, English and Chinese. Yeah, I think we'll say no to that also. I don't think I've been pointing out every game that was in early access, and that's probably helpful to not do that.
No one gets past me.
We're gonna evolve. And if I just killed this guy on this, or anything else, this guy would have had Storm and attacked. I didn't play that right. Next we have a game that looks like it's probably a Chinese... They're saying it's a puzzle platformer? I don't think it really is. Looks more like almost a different take on an art style for a visual novel. But it doesn't even seem like there's much text here. It kind of doesn't feel like there actually is much of a game at all. Just some little mini games of cooking. And yeah, seems like you maybe have to program the game yourself from the looks of it, and it's doesn't look particularly good. It's free, so the price is right. Chinese only. And I will have to say that this does look like an actual product that somebody is actually trying to make good versus the mountain of garbage that we tend to run into. Alright, well, if we put this here,
Are you ready for true combat?
and then this here,
Got me feeling hungry.
and then we ball this,
March on. Armor weapons more. I like. Give me that.
attack that. We can then attack there.
I never.
Video Game Chronicles says Half-Life 2 has been given a surprise update with ultra-wide support and field and vision improvements, which, yeah, they're just secretly working on Half-Life 2 all the time, making improvements. This is an indication that, yes, at some point they are still working, to some extent they are still working on making games in the Half-Life series and potentially working towards a Half-Life 3, but we're no closer today than we were yesterday to Half-Life 3. And remember, Half-Life 3 is supposed to be running on the Source 2 engine, not the Source engine, which I think Half-Life 2 is running on, and I think even Alex was technically still on the Source engine, so yeah, they're gonna probably have to abandon the idea of being an engine creator to make Half-Life 3 actually something that comes out. GameDeveloper.com has a developer insight postmortem on the game Tome, T-O-E-M. I believe this is the photography game that oddly is in like black and white, and you're finding objects and giving it to people, so it's kind of like a hidden object, hide and seek type game. It seems ridiculous though that people make these games and they already have their postmortem written, or within a week they already have a postmortem written, when in reality, if you really were going to look retrospectively at the development and the release of a game, you need to take at least 6 weeks, if not much longer, to evaluate the impact and see how many units get sold and
This town eats good folk for breakfast.
really
This
just
town eats
work
good folk for breakfast.
towards succeeding a lot more. Like work on what the actual impact of a game is. It's simply advertisement at this point to do a postmortem on a game that only came out a few weeks ago. Here, Video Game Chronicles says the same article. The thing here is it says it's fired 20 employees, and 20 more employees were reportedly disciplined, which I guess that brings it up to 40. I don't know if I would believe anything Activision Blizzard has to say, though. They're desperately trying to lie their way out of a lawsuit. And see, the irony here is that those 40 employees could potentially end up at a company like Second Dinner, Ben Brode's company, and they could be actually very decent employees, and Activision Blizzard could have just sacrificed them, sent them to the slaughter as lambs to scapegoat them. Honestly,
To arms! There's a battle underway!
if
I guess you're looking for a fight.
a manager somewhere in a job does something inappropriate and then they stop doing that thing, and then 10 years passed and then you're retroactively canceling them or punishing them. That's not really a clear path that's an unemployable employee. People are very unique and different, and I could see a lot of people being addicted to drugs, alcohol, stress, doubt, having mental breakdowns. Just a lot of somewhat excusable excuses as to why somebody would have acted differently. They could just straight up be very young. Like, if in your first year of employment, when you're 16, 17, or 18, you do something inappropriate, and then you have a spotless record after that point, that used to count for something. And if I was a boss, I would definitely hope that I could use that to count for something too, because I don't want to have to train new people and fire people just in the hopes that the next person is going to be better, willy-nilly. Even as a person who thinks people probably should be fired a lot more often, part of that idea is that you fire somebody, then they go work at another job and they start over from scratch, and they don't have that albatross hanging over their head, and it's not going to come back and haunt them again. Yeah.
This town eats good folk for breakfast.
I'm still not sure if I don't believe that Ben from Giant Bomb wasn't fired as a form of like punishment for doing something inappropriate, and then brought back after a certain amount of time, but they didn't want to make it public that he was being suspended / fired, so they had him announce that he wasn't going to work for Giant Bomb anymore, and then he comes back and works for Giant Bomb. So yeah, I still don't know if maybe that is exactly why Ben is back with Giant Bomb, and all the Giant Bomb East people are now at Techland, which Nextlander is the name of that new website and YouTube channel. And I'm not watching Nextlander. Like, I never liked any of the commentary of anybody from Giant Bomb East. They weren't really reviewing games or doing anything of value, and they're not doing anything as far as I can tell now. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Swap Out, which looks like it's a low polygon first-person shooter. $2.69. They're comparing it to Zombie, English full audio. I'm a little surprised Zombie is mixed reviewed. I didn't think it was that bad of a game, really. Maybe I'm a little generous. Maybe I'm a little too generous.
I bring you the stars to make a wish come true. Unbelievable!
Why am I drawing 2 cards at this point?
March on!
Now I'm shining.
Why am I
brighter
evolving
than
this
ever.
guy at this point? Here we have a game on Steam called You Are Weak, which looks like it's an asset flip garbage game. Very surreal, weird imagery, but I don't think there's a real game there. $2.99, English only. Some of this imagery could be used in like an art piece or something, but I don't think you really want to see it in a video game, or you'd want it in a better polished visual presentation. We have a game called Battle Map Studio, which looks like garbage. $13.59, third-party EULA, English only. Yep, this looks like you're just building things. This is to make a battle map to then use in like Dungeons and Dragons type simulation, I think. Not really a game. Here we have Vacation Adventures Park Ranger 12, which is a hidden object game for $6.99, English only. Say no to that.
I need more fear.
Let's play this.
Got a job to do.
Okay. We keep this. We keep this. We keep this.
This world is filled with
Loyalty is
mystery.
ironclad.
Go ahead and evolve
One
here.
step closer to victory. Harder armor. Steel yourself.
Was it really necessary to evolve at that point? No, it wasn't. That was a waste of an evolve, actually.
What pluck?
Gloomhaven version 1.0 release is out now, so I guess it's come out of early access. Is, I think, a Diablo clone type game. It's rated overwhelmingly positive. $34.99, English full audio. Yep. So version 1.0 now available.
Goodbye is inevitable.
There's
Farewell,
no
Iowa.
longer a reason to leave this on the fall list. This should just go to the wish list.
Senators.
I might have to do a little bit more research to see if Gloomhaven is the
Could
hex
get
grid
used to
based
this rain.
Diablo game I think it is, or is it possibly something closer to Heroes of Might and Magic 3? If it is closer to Heroes of Might and Magic 3, that might work also. It's being published by Asmodee Digital, and I think it's kind of worth pointing out that most of the Asmodee Digital games kind of suck. Like, I just tried to play Love Letter and that was a terrible release. I don't know if I've played Pandemic. I'm surprised I don't own Carcassonne. I haven't played First Journey, but Ticket to Ride in general I spotlighted and it sucked. Haven't played this one either. Wow, there's actually quite a few games here that I own that I haven't played. Yeah, of course the problem is I don't like Asmodee Digital as a game developer. They tend to make particularly lazy games. And is Game of Thrones relevant anymore? I'd say no. Yeah, I think we have to absolutely say no to Game of Thrones.
Remember, every droplet 100 droplets in a single stroke.
Like, I have some Game of Thrones games that I wanted to cover, but I wouldn't be surprised if I never get around to it, because yeah, Game of Thrones kind of failed miserably
Train harder.
as a TV series and as a book series.
Enemy or no, you did good.
Man, boy did I feel like I was just about to win. Oh well, we'll keep on grinding. There's really no reason not to. Here we have a game on Steam called Vero Move, which looks like it is a Beat Saber type game, VR experience. I think it's trying to be a little bit more cyberpunk around the Beat Saber. It seems like it's got boxing and slashing.
There's a battle underway.
Do you need to really wear boxing gloves
Come on.
when you are in VR? I think no, you shouldn't. Because if you're wearing boxing gloves, then you're going to feel sensations a little bit slower and have a little bit of cushioning there, which means if you swing wildly and punch somebody, you may not realize that you've punched them the first time with boxing gloves, and you may punch them a second time on accident. Yeah, and in general, a lot of the protective gear in blood sports is there to let the boxing go longer. Bare knuckle boxing is probably a less brutal, shorter experience. Regardless of that, though, this definitely looks interesting, so I'm going to put it on the fall list. $19.99 is not asking a lot. Third-party EULA, English full audio. This is really just copying elements we've seen in other games, but it's not doing a bad job at it. Here we have a game called Kobo Lock, which looks like it's just a joke game. $7.99, English only. Here we have a game called Foo ... which looks like a joke game. $7.99, English only.
It looks like I'm up.
Shutting down.
I probably play these cards too early and should just hold back and let them do some damage to me. Here we have a game called Camelot Wrath of the Green Knight, which is a hidden object game. $14.99, English full audio allegedly. This is from Telltale Games UK, not to be confused with Telltale US, I guess. That's kind of weird that you could have two Telltale games, but in all fairness, Telltale is kind of a very generic title for a company. Here we have a game called Monster Adventure, which looks like it's trying to be an educational game, but it looks like garbage. See, this is the problem, is that even in modern time, if you try to make an educational game, you probably don't have the budget to make it look good. Yeah, it's free, so I guess the price is right. English only. Somebody trying to be a good citizen, or at least seeming like they're trying to be a good citizen. But
I go with
yeah,
the wind.
that doesn't make me want to play it anymore. GameDeveloper.com has a report that says Facebook could rebrand itself to position itself as a metaverse company. They're thinking this might happen at the annual Connect conference on October 28th. Facebook is a pretty bad name, but if people were going to metaverse instead of Facebook, does that change much? Probably not. Facebook effectively has been a metaverse of some sort company for a long time now, because they have definitely integrated like Instagram stories into Facebook, and Messenger and games and just a ton of stuff into Facebook, versus what it was just originally as a kind of private forum. Meanwhile, the number of people that should be on Facebook and are on Facebook is increasingly diminishing, and that's probably a good thing. Do this.
The uncharted desert awaits. What do we have here?
Have you calmed down?
Do we want to evolve and attack more? Nah, let's hold back. Let's see, Gametsu has Megaton Musashi game opening special. I think we had heard about Megaton Musashi, but
Best of luck to you.
don't really remember anything about it. It looks like a Mecha Gundam. Looks like you're fighting a bunch of purple glowing monsters. It might be a game here. It may never come to the West. It may be poor running and boring or ugly or just repetitive. Really not a lot I think I can say about that. Let's see. Komatsu says Square Enix London Mobile has been established. They're developing a Tomb Raider and Avatar The Last Airbender games, which mobile versions of those games are probably not what people are looking for. Let's see. If I attack here,
Let's speed things up.
then do this, and then this. Then I guess we just end the turn there.
Shutting down.
I cleaned up using uBlock Origin, the ESRB websites, so now it's less full of garbage as far as ESRB ratings. Not a lot really could be removed, though. I could potentially try and get rid of like a background. You kind of don't want to get rid of the listings here of companies, but maybe you could get rid of that. Then we could definitely get rid of like that. So get rid of the learn more, and then that makes it a little bit smaller, but then that's kind of a problem. And probably get rid of the top banner here.
Should have been quicker.
And get rid of this top banner, top line there. And we could try and get rid of the background. Nope, can't get rid of the background. There. So that didn't quite fix it because of the background issue, but that does make it slightly better. Less garbage being shown, for whatever little that actually matters. Okay, we'll take this one, and this one, and then this one. And then we will hit this one.
Shutting down.
And 50-50 shot to hit that one. GameDeveloper.com has the same article here that Xbox Game Pass subscriber falls short of its target. Gematsu has Blood Rain revamped and Blood Rain 2 revamped, launching November 18th. I think we had heard these games were announced, but
I love his job.
they
Of course I do.
may not have had actual dates. Quite a different visual style here, just in the brightness of the red hair between one screenshot and the other, and a very different outfit, and frankly just positioning. Here you have a very standard front-on position. You're getting a little bit of an angle to see some side boob and some more hip. We'll look into this. Her shoulders and her hips are kind of in line, but her head is tilted. Now, in contrast, here you have her completely turned and facing the other direction and twisted so that both of her boob and cleavage are very visible, and then twisted again back in a different direction so that she can have her legs wrapped around this guy, basically humping him. And this outfit is definitely designed, and this angle is definitely designed to show off her buttocks. It's just like very comic booky, ridiculous, anatomically impossible drawing. Like, her spine should start here and be snapped completely off here. And she is a vampire, so I mean, I guess you could excuse it away as that.
You stand between me and glory.
But I don't think that's
Turn light to the canals.
At your service.
something they even put any thought into.
You're weak.
No one gets past me.
I did my bestest.
March on!
Our courage. Today we fight.
And yeah, you have to be careful. You don't want to go too crazy. Even in a game where it's a vampire who drinks blood of Nazis to regain her life and is shooting guns. Like, I mean, it's a fairly ridiculous, crazy game concept in the first place, but if you break that line of believability too far, it becomes almost impossible to repair that. In the actual game, you can see it's fairly low polygon and fairly blurry, and the hair is not anywhere as bright red as it is in that image.
Enemy or no, you did good.
If anything, I think they probably should have just made a new cover art, but then I bet people would complain about new cover art too. Elvira is presenting videos for Netflix for Halloween, and she is a fairly old actress at this point. And
To arms! There's a battle underway!
I'll be darned if she doesn't look amazing and still rocking a massive amount of cleavage. Check out the Netflix trailers celebrating Elvira. Now she's a natural blonde, I believe, and she's wearing a big fake black beehive wig, but it's not like she's balding or anything as far as I've seen her in her regular outfit. And sure, I'm sure she's got a ton of HD makeup on her from Netflix, but
He's feeling hungry.
yeah, it is frankly shocking how good looking she looks, considering she basically looks like she actually is a vampire who's been around for thousands of years and hasn't aged a bit in the 20 or 30 years since she was most prevalent and most well known. But I would still make the argument that it probably is time for Elvira to take on a apprentice. Like, there needs to be some competitor or somebody ready to take on that role and replace that role. I don't know if maybe people are
Let's speed things up.
not willing to allow themselves to be objectified in the way that Elvira was, and that's why there hasn't been somebody new to take on the role. But it totally would make sense.
Training you. A precious life deserves a precious death.
Best of luck to you.
More jewels, more.
But yeah, the old Scream queens pretty much are probably gonna die out without that many replacements.
Are you worth your weight in gold?
Getting back to talking about video games though, Epic Games Publishing announces a publishing deal with Eyes Out and Spryfox. A unannounced cosmic horror game and a non-violent persistent multiplayer game are on the way. We'll, I guess, probably have to wait quite a long time to figure out what these games are. And I would have to just question, this is like a music video that they're showing.
You have summoned the plague
Is
of
there
starvation.
potentially, I guess this is Spryfox, a shift happening here where instead of getting paid money to be an exclusive, more games are going to be pushed to be published by Epic Games Publishing, so then as a publishing company they can take
I'll see you in purgatory.
a percentage of all sales in perpetuity, even if it ends up on Steam. Because that's typically how a publishing deal does, is Epic Games Publishing would give Eyes Out or Spryfox several $1 million to run their business and develop the games, and then the game would have to sell and recoup those millions of dollars that they were given before any of the profits from the sales would then be shared percentage-wise with Epic Games Publishing and Spry Fox. And in perpetuity, usually there's a case where even after Epic Games Publishing has recovered all of their money, they are still making 20-30% on every sale, making even more profit. And then there's other questions, certainly in the publishing deals, about who owns the rights to what, which leads to things like in the music industry where people don't even own the rights to their own music due to terrible publishing deals. And I don't think we are past the point of seeing a lot of terrible publishing deals in video games.
Time to dance for your life.
Enemy or no, you did good.
We are not winning. Let's just spice it up a little bit. I was hoping for one quick disconnect, and that was probably an hour and a half ago. But playing ranked, that's not going to happen, obviously. The Idolmaster Starlight Season shipments and digital sales have topped 76,500 units, which that is not a lot of units, but you're also talking about a Idolmaster game that came out just a couple weeks ago. Video Game Chronicles says the new PlayStation 5 update improves, quote, the system performance, end quote. Sony recently teased interesting, exciting, and fantastic ideas for future updates. Of course, it's real easy to say improve system performance without saying anything else. You could literally remove one check, one loop, one line of code, and that would improve system performance. I wouldn't be super surprised if you simply had code in your system to add a delay, and then you just reduce that delay every time there was a new update. So instead of like 100 microseconds, you turn it down to 99 microseconds. You don't do anything else to improve system performance. You can always say that the next update improves system performance at that point. Nobody's ever going to claim the opposite, that their update deteriorates system performance. Let's see. Matsu says Panorama Cotton for the PS4 and Switch launches October 29th. This is the, I believe, shoot 'em up game. Very 90s anime style of characters here. I guess the Cotton series really is just something that has been around. And here you have an interesting, like, limited edition pencil sketch version of it. Trying to look like the Master System boxes. Yeah, and the actual game, yeah, it's not a shoot 'em up, it's a 3D shoot 'em up. So slightly off there. Still not sure if those games are coming to the West, though.
Is that how you treat a lady? I take so much for that axe.
Game developer has another feature here, wrangling the grand interstellar ambitions of Jet the Far Shore, which you can read that if you're interested.
And so our pact
People are definitely talking about Inscription like crazy. So somebody just directly linked to it. Looks like this website has several different elements that if you've played the game, you might be able to figure it out what to do. But honestly, I would fully recommend nobody spoil themselves any further. And instead, people just play Inscription.
You crossed the line.
I don't think Inscription is as long of a game as it could have been. So
Is that how you treat
I
a
suspect it isn't going to be as long as Hand of Fate, where you're getting 20 or 40 hours out of it. I bet you, if you're going to get a lot of time out of Inscription, it's going to be because it gets really, really difficult and it has a roguelike element, which I think it does, that you have to play and die and lose multiple times. And I'm interested in that being potentially the case. Let's see. Video Game Chronicles has the same article talking about Eyes Out and Spry Fox. This time they put Spry Fox on top. This is an interesting point that Video Games Chronicles talking about. What it really shows you is, I talked about this story, and this was from one of my sources that I occasionally use but don't often mention. That, like, I talked about this probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's been a decent amount of time, and none of the mainstream video game journalist sites that I follow have touched it with a 10-foot pole, because effectively this is a censorship issue, and most mainstream video game journalists, Western journalists, are pro-censorship. So when you see Video Games Chronicle, which is kind of a woke company, I don't agree with them much, covers this article, but they cover it like 2 or 3 weeks later as if they just discovered it. I can't help but cynically think it's because they had nothing better to write about. Or they finally got a response directly from Capcom, where the initial reporting of this was just attempted to be ignored by Capcom, and I guess maybe Capcom realized that wasn't going to last or work.
Faith is an no, the smiles are not.
That was almost amusing.
As for the actual story, Resident Evil 4 VR has cut content that sexualized Ashley. Not just Ashley, though. They also cut content that made pretty much any reference to Leon Kennedy being kind of a flirty guy. Maybe you would call him a misogynist. I don't know if you really would call that that way. Like him joking to himself that I guess there's no gender discrimination here when he inspects one of the zombie ladies from the village with a pitchfork through her face. Him flirting with Hunnigan, the character that you coordinate with and talk to over the radio. Those elements are also gone. And there's really no reason to change it. If anything, Ashley is, I think, more sexualizing Leon, and Leon doesn't. I don't recall him really trying to flirt. Like, yeah. There's one element where Lewis sexualizes, makes a sex joke, and that's what they all are, is just jokes. So the death of comedy is effectively happening. And see, this is the problem too, is I bet nobody really asked for this, and yet SJW's definitely asked for this. They sent a message that was overreacted to and overheard by Capcom, and they've created a controversy potentially here that's not really much of a controversy, but so like the iconic last line in the game where Ashley propositions Leon, so after you take me back to my place, how about we do some overtime? That's been removed. You can't look up Ashley's skirt even though you were able to try, and she would have called Leon a pervert before. So they even had those elements in the game and they took them out. Yeah. He's flirting with Ingrid Hannigan. Somehow I thought you'd be older. Necessary to make the games fit today's standards. Who's establishing these standards in the minds of these people? Because I think you'd find there's a lot of disagreement there as to who is establishing standards and whether these sex jokes, for lack of a better term, are outside of the standards. We're not talking anything extreme here, and this is the problem. Certainly, is that if in Resident Evil 4 there was a horrifically just out of tone and out of place, I don't know, kidnap or rape scene of Ashley, I could kind of see, yeah, maybe you get rid of that, but you really can't even do that. Once something has been released to the public, it becomes the public, and if you're censoring people's memories and their experiences, it's never going to end well. You're never going to look like the guy. You're just going to look like you're pro-censorship, that you're trying to rewrite the past. Once an artist has released his art, once it's been seen by others, that's it. It should be set in stone, regardless. Yeah, I don't think there's any other stance you can take. Like, otherwise it's just you're just completely making a game of rewriting history, I guess is the best way to describe it. So yeah. London Rocksteady is looking for a lead data analyst, part of Warner Media, which I think is either soon to not be part of AT&T or is soon to be part of AT&T. I have to remind myself how that merger went or is going. What's really scary too is if there's censorship in the Oculus Rift re-release, yet another re-release of Resident Evil 4, who's to say that there won't be a Steam update to remove that content? Like, I probably should play Resident Evil 4 and make some coverage before that gets censored and edited out. And who's to say that if there is going to ever be a remaster Resident Evil 4, which we'd all like to see, that doesn't get censored too. Like, you're talking about a stupid horror zombie game. Like, if you start taking out the dumb sex jokes, at what point do you not get pushed into taking out the violence? So you can't shoot the zombies, or you take out the gore, so you can't see the shots after you've the violence or the gore or the monsters. Like, you could continuously go down the slippery slope and over the course of a long enough period of time turn Resident Evil 4 into just a walking simulator with no zombies, no guns, and nothing to do. Maybe you solve a few puzzles, but no puzzles that would be horrific or gory or scary. It would be brightly lit, because it couldn't possibly be a scary game. Particularly in the United States, I don't think the U.S. citizenry is in agreement that they want to turn the world into nanny states, where other people are constantly telling you what you can and can't enjoy, or what you can and can't do. Yeah, compared to something like the UK, where the UK is fairly willing to allow itself to be a nanny state and has pretty much made itself a nanny state.
Witness the power.
And eventually it won't just be a nanny state, it will probably be a straight up just dictatorship. Or maybe even a theocracy. But I don't want to get into a big rant. Like, just trying to rush today. I've managed to get most of the news done, but I really haven't managed to do it in any fast process. And I haven't gotten the daily quest done, which had I re-rolled that earlier, I would have gotten all the daily quests done. Let's just cover the rest of the news and be done. Eterna Noctis weapon upgrades teaser trailer and screenshots are available according to Gamatsu. I have no idea what Eterna Noctis is though. Is this gonna load? Looks like it's a platforming game. Doesn't look terrible. Maybe it's got a little bit too much happening in the foreground, so it might be a little hard to actually play. Looks like it's got some kind of upgrade system that's pretty crazy complicated. Seems like your character may have a light and dark attack that might be something of interest. Sorry, I'm going quiet. Suda51 says Grasshopper's 10-year plan includes 3 IPs and maybe some reboots. He would like to revisit Killer is Dead or reboot a Nintendo IP. Also, I think said in an interview that this is from Video Games Chronicle. I don't know if he was actually interviewing with them, that they've already started on their next game, which no doubt, of course you would have. We already talked about Square Enix opening a mobile studio in London. That's from GameDeveloper.com. The God of War announced trailer for PC is on YouTube if you want to see it. But then again, God of War is just here, so. Now, here's the thing. Regardless of the fact that this is a thing on Steam, doesn't mean that it will play well. If God of War comes out on Steam and is just the worst port ever, I could still definitely see not playing it and not bothering with it. And so, yeah, we'll put this on the follow list, and it's saying it's being developed by Santa Monica Studio. Wasn't this Sony Santa Monica before? And it's being published by PlayStation Mobile, which this is, I guess, not the first PlayStation mobile game or PlayStation game that was once an exclusive. Days Gone, Horizon Zero Dawn, Helldivers, Guns Up, Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, and Arrowhead Co-op Collection, which I have no idea what that really is. Seems to be Magicka and Helldivers and Gauntlet Slayer Edition. Gauntlet is rated mostly positive. Interesting. So yeah. It's not their first attempt, certainly, but it is yet another big attempt. When you see 2 points, you form a line, you can pretty much assume that any previously Sony PlayStation exclusive may start showing up on Steam. Here we have a game called Whitehaven, which looks like it is a horror game. It's probably nothing, but I'm willing to give it a chance. $8.99 English, Spain, Spanish, English full audio. We've got about 10 more games. Here we have The Fox and the Feather, which looks like it's a tabletop game. Yeah, I'll give it a follow and see if people like it. $6.99. Third-party account with Direwolf, third-party EULA, single-player and online PvP. There may not be enough content here to play in single-player alone to justify its price. Apparently, Ultimate Games is having a publisher sale, but I'm not going to click on that link because I don't recognize Ultimate Games. Farming Life here looks like a farming simulator, which I have no interest in those. $8.49, English full audio, several other languages. Demolition and Build VR seems to be also available. Yeah, maybe doing this in VR might be interesting. I actually want to see some feedback on that. Like working as a demolition and construction crew in VR is something I think people might want to try for half a second before they realize the reality of how little that kind of work would pay and how manually strenuous it would be. $15.99, whole bunch of languages here. Yeah, I imagine you could potentially let people pretend to be on a construction crew and swing a sledgehammer for about an hour and charge them a pretty premium for that before they realize that it's pretty crappy work. Here we have Priest Simulator Heavy Duty, which looks like just a joke troll game. Also being published by Ultimate Games. But it's free, and maybe it's a bit of a joke demo for an actual game later. English and Polish. There's too many games coming out all at once, though. Here we have Dangerous Platform, which looks like nothing of interest. $2.39 English only. Here we have the Master Club, which looks like a collection of like pool hall games and arcade games. Not really. Arcade games. In VR. $4.99 English only. Visually, I just don't think this is polished enough for what it's offering. And you probably need about 2 or 3 times as many mini games for that kind of experience. Here we have a game called King Boo, which doesn't look like it really is much of anything. It seems like you just wander around floating platforms, collecting keys and things. Kind of they're saying exploration game. I would say, yeah, that's probably the best way to describe it. $2.99 English and Dutch. No to that. Here we have a game called Always the Same Nightmare, which looks like it's a platforming game. Let's look at the video and see how it looks like it plays. Looks like it would be quite frustrating, this game. This doesn't look like it's going to be an easy platformer by any means. $9.59 English and French. I guess I'll give this a follow, but I think I'd probably reject this game if I thought about it more. Here we have Crusade of the Dietra, D-I-E-I-T-R-A, which looks bad as far as the animation. Looks like an RPG Maker game. Free to play, Italian only. I don't know what Dietra means in Italian. I would assume maybe deities. Here we have a game called Cursed Town, which also looks bad. $2.99 English only. Here we have a game called Grub Gauntlet, which also looks bad. Early access, $7.19 English, allegedly full audio. And then we have Stardander Revenant, which looks like it's an RPG / visual novel game of no real interest. Interesting that we didn't see any adult games today, even though we went through a decent amount, which does imply to me that we may see a build up and a release of adult games on Friday, or even next Friday. But who knows if that still is a thing that's happening. So now I'm going to go through my Twitter feed and see if there's any new news, and then that'll be it for this stream. Somebody here has drawn the maiden from Blackwater in a more pixely art style, and Koei Tecmo has retweeted it in a GIF. So that's interesting. But doesn't really mean anything. I don't think you could make a Maiden from Blackwater game that was even less visually polished. I don't know, maybe you could. Maybe you could make it more flat in 2D, and then the graphics wouldn't age as quickly. And maybe then there would be a maybe that there would be a longer lead out time for something like Maiden of Blackwater. And maybe a bigger fan base. Got just rambling here. Yeah, I'm scrolling down my Twitter feed, clicking on links, but my Twitter feed's still a mess. It is random, doesn't work half the time. It puts things completely out of order. It is really a nightmare. Yeah, and I have to scroll through every game that potentially has come out in the past 3 to 4 hours. Actually, you know what? I'll leave these games. We'll just cover the news. So, Video Games Chronicle says that Xbox says it wants to make more PlayStation-style blockbuster games. So, okay. Making sure we've got those kinds of games for our fans is important to us, says the studio's boss. Which studio's boss is this? Matt Booty of Xbox Game Studios. Getting on Kind of Funny Games interviews. Kind of Funny Games, for what kind of feels like a nobody group of people, have a lot of connections and cronyism, so they do seem to get more exclusives than you'd think they would do. The voice actor Chris Ayers has died at the age of 56, which is very young. He was the Dragon Ball character Frieza in several video games, and voiced characters in Smite and the Gunstringer. So yeah, that's another fairly young people. I think we are gonna hear more stories, unfortunately, of younger and younger people randomly dying. Whereas if it weren't a pandemic, we wouldn't be hearing that. But things are as they are. we can talk about the remake of Corpse Party 2021, now available, just released on Steam. Yep. I definitely think this goes to the fall list at the minimum. Of course, there might be an argument to still own Corpse Party 2016. And the bundle's not that expensive. It's full Japanese acting, English and Korean interface and subtitles. Corpse Party looks like an RPG Maker game, but plays more like a horror mystery game. And the original game, the original version of it is, I think, extremely well reviewed. 91% of 886 user reviews, which isn't the largest number of reviews ever, but you are talking about a game that looks like an RPG Maker game and has horror elements to it. So you're talking niches upon niches, limiting the number of people who would actually play something like Corpse Party, on top of the name being Corpse Party, which I'm sure also eliminates a few people from being willing to play it. And even at that, I'm not sure I'm one of the people that is willing to play it. Alright. So I've got 3 more tabs to check and then we'll be done. GameDeveloper.com still retweeting the same thing over and over again, so they're terrible about that, making it more difficult to figure out if any new news has been reported. Let's see. Yeah, we really should have heard something about that announcement. There wasn't an announcement as far as a Fable product or something that felt like it was going to be a Fable product, but they really said they had nothing to announce, and that was it. Anyways, Gematsu has Clang 2 for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch, launching November 17th. I don't recall a Clang 1. This does definitely look like a very weird looking character. It's almost like a weird Star Fox type game with the hands at the beginning, but not so much now. Apparently it's supposed to be some kind of rhythm game. If this is like truly, if Clang is truly a rhythm game worth playing, that would be very interesting. So it's like fight animations that are more kind of like quick time events, I think, based on rhythm prompts that they're not really showing so much visually. You probably have to do it audio prompts. And then QU Byte Connect for 2021 is set for October 28th. It's featuring the Breakers Collective, QU Byte Classics, and more. This more of a collection of Japanese games companies, I suspect. Yeah. These are not games I particularly recognize. I think I recognize that one, but not this one. This one looks kind of interesting. That looked kind of interesting. As a, let's see if we can get back to that one. Beating up, just a quick frame of a girl in a mask beating up a boy. But yeah, this definitely seems like a collection of smaller, lesser known games that are not coming from AAA publishers. So we might get some interesting announcements from that. Oh, I guess this is not Japanese companies, it's Brazilian companies if I look at the logo and look at the Brazilian time being mentioned. Alright, so that could be basically any kind of game at that point. Yeah, and Cling 2 is on Steam, so what I'd want to know is Cling 1. Was that reviewed? Well, mostly positive. I'm gonna put it on the fall list, but I'm not gonna go through every single game. I'll leave a few for Friday. Not that there really is any reason to leave any for Friday, but I don't want to go any further. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.